sure we'll wait for Dana. Depends on how
Aero
much longer it's gonna
Peru
be.
603 was in 96 as well. Well, I never. They had two 75s go down in 96.
Wow. Hello, everyone.
Hi, everybody.
We are here, and we are intending to do a show today. Is my how's my volume, by the way?
Yeah, absolutely fine. Perfect.
Okay.
Compared with, which is a bit weird, and last week it was a bit weird.
Yeah, I don't know why. Don't quite understand. I wonder, am I purring like sometimes I do when I'm using the H5 as an interface? Let's see. Let me see if I can get the.
Very quiet purr.
Okay. I think it has something to do with the H5. Because usually when I'm using the Behringer, which I also have with me, just not a power cord, it doesn't normally do the purring. Nice sectional behind Jeff.
It's exactly like a cat sitting the other side of the room. In other words, it just has to take a breath every now and again, and then it purrs. But it's very quiet. You wouldn't notice it.
Okay, good. Well, the good thing is it's not coming through in the audio recording.
Excellent.
The purring's back.
Yeah, well, I was just asking if it was because I was telling Nick that I lugged my big heavy digital mixer with me, so we wouldn't have any purring. And then I realized as I was pulling it out and putting it on the desk that I forgot the power cord that goes with it.
Well,
but luckily I still have my H5 with me, so
gotcha.
Neville says you're motorboating. I don't know what that is.
Motorboat, it's the same thing. Purring, the sound. It's for some reason using the H5 as an interface, it makes this purring sound when I'm talking.
Somehow I think Neville has a secondary meaning behind that too.
Oh, okay.
Maybe.
Wow.
Maybe, Steph, can you explain to us what motorboating means?
I'm not going to.
Come on.
Is it a medical problem?
It's a medical term. It's an anatomical
problem.
That's it.
Yeah.
All right.
It's an action involving. Oh, never mind.
Involving a motorboat.
Well, at least Micah and Pip were the same thing I was. So.
Purring isn't noticeable at all. Thank you. I'm glad that my mustache is bringing joy to the world. And after there's a piece of feedback here that we're going to cover regarding mustaches. And,
oh yes, I was so pleased.
And I was looking at that, going, "Holy crap! I can't hold a candle to these guys."
Oh, I don't know. Some of them you definitely could.
I'm going to have to use that wax that you gave me, Nick, and
that will
start throwing this thing out and doing the
fancy stuff.
Especially the one the Asian guy. I think it's an Asian guy or is an Indian guy, but he has like
the Indian guy. I think
it's like the end. It's like that. It's that wide.
Yeah, but some of them just happened to be famous people and had moustaches. I mean, they weren't moustaches.
They included a cartoon.
I can only get away with so much. As I think actually right now that my mustache is probably out of regulation.
Oh, really?
It's not supposed to go beyond like the corner.
What, beyond sideways or beyond downwards?
Sideways.
Oh, really? Oh, okay.
I don't know if there's actually any kind of limitation to how long it can be.
All right.
I can grow it down to my chin.
Grow it down this way. Start braiding it like dreads.
It's within the lateral limits.
Yeah, you said nothing about length.
Yeah.
Jeff is the walrus. Cuckoo. Well done, Nev. Nev's on form tonight, obviously.
Good.
So, should we kick off?
Yeah, let's kick off, and then when Dana is able to join us, then we'll add him in. And let's see. Let me get to my Evernote page and sound check.
WAPG. It's the airline pilot guy.
That's all right?
Yeah, absolutely fine.
Sounds good on my end as well. Killing myths. Or milling kiths.
You're a ninth myth. I'm going to kill you.
Excuse me, myth.
Myth.
Well, you
All
do.
of a sudden, I can't
You
do
ready?
this.
So let's say at 10 after.
Oh, hold on. I need to.
Oh, we need to record.
I need to record, and I need to switch something.
I almost started without starting my recorder. What?
What?
Oh, you didn't hear that.
No. Oh, sorry. I had to.
I started my recorder and it's playing the very end of the show, the outro, and I'm thinking, why is it doing that? Okay, now I'm back at the beginning. Okay, and hit record, and I need to mute this track right here so I don't hear that. Okay, just let me know when you're ready, Steffi.
Ready.
Ready. Okay. 3, 2, 1. Not bad. Not bad. Not good either.
I heard Nick way after mine.
You're lucky I remembered to unmute myself.
Yeah, it wouldn't have done any good, would it?
Well,
No.
it wouldn't have mattered because it still would have recorded on his end.
Oh, good point.
Oh, that's true.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it would have come. Yeah, I guess it really would be a moot point, wouldn't it? A mute point.
A mute
Very
point.
good.
Okay, so we're recording. Recordings are going, and I think I'm about ready. You all ready as well?
Sure.
I'm Radio Roger, and you're listening to the Airline Pilot Guy Show.
WAPG. It's the Airline Pilot Guy.
Airline Pilot Guy, episode 352.
Yeah, he's up in the sky. It's the Airline Pilot Guy.
Hello, you're listening to the Airline Pilot Guy Show, the view from our side of the cockpit door. I'm Captain Jeff, your host, broadcasting live from Studio 468 in the Hyatt Place Hotel in Nashville, Tennessee.
Yeah, he's up in the sky. It's the Airline Pilot Guy. Get your ride and he's flying by. With the Airline Pilot Guy.
In today's episode, aviation news, your feedback, and this week's plane tale, killing myths. So get all settled in, tray tables and seat backs in their upright and locked positions. Electronic devices powered on. Flight 352 is ready for pushback. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Airline Pilot Guy Show. It's an aviation podcast where we discuss news in aviation, strangely enough, and we cover your great feedback. And here, to help me with that, from her lakeside studio in South Carolina, she's a doctor, a skydiver, a marathon runner, a strength training junkie, IPA connoisseur, and commercial multi-engine instrument-rated pilot, Dr. Steph.
Hey, Captain Jeff. Good to see you this afternoon. Looking forward to a great show today.
Looking forward to it as well. And also joining us from across the pond in his studio in the English countryside, a professional photographer, former RAF, RAAF fighter pilot, current captain for an international airline based in London, Captain Nick.
Hi, Jeff. You're not going to be able to say that for much longer. Less than 6 months to go. Woohoo!
I know, I was just thinking
But
the
who's
same
counting?
thing.
Who's counting, really?
When I was saying current captain for a major, and I'm thinking,
You're going to have to say former.
Going to be a major change.
yeah,
Say you're
yep,
retired.
yes.
Pilots of leisure or something.
Pilots of leisure. Maybe when I retire, I'll have to change the name to have the show. This week's episode of Pilots of Leisure. Anyway, how is everybody doing?
Good. Really good.
Yeah. Well, you look great, as you always do.
Oh.
A short day for you, Steph?
Yeah, generally on Thursdays. Although
Excellent.
I tend to fill up the time with other things besides work.
Yeah. Kind of your run errands day.
yes, it's nice to have that half a day to get things done, because otherwise I normally, work business hours. So it's hard to get errands done, especially other businesses that have the same business hours, or just have time to be here and do a show with you guys.
All right. Anything interesting happening in your life, like out flying or meetups or anything
Not
like that?
me personally, but I did take a quick trip to Florida last weekend, which was nice. Just a 1 day down and back, basically. Nice visit with my grandfather down there. Nice weather. We went to see a football game Saturday or Sunday afternoon. The Panthers played terribly, but it was a nice 82-degree day in Tampa. So enjoyed the weather. Good family time, and back here to work.
Have you been able to do your flight to keep your airline status?
Yes, I took care of that.
Good.
I rode a lovely Airbus A319 the other night up to Baltimore and back. Excuse me. And the same airplane, just got off, checked back in again, got back on, came back. 760 miles, which took care of my 758-mile deficit for the status
Just
for the
barely.
Actually, I think I got credited 1,000 miles for it anyway.
Oh,
But-
okay. And so spending that money on that kind of flight is worth it then to keep the status.
Yeah, I came, like I said, within 758 miles of having platinum status for the year, which is 50,000 miles total. I was like, after 48,000 or 49,242 miles, I'm not just going to let that go away.
Right, good for you.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So,
Very cool. Very cool. All right. Captain Nick, anything interesting happening between the last time we recorded and today's show? Like maybe any kind of Christmas extravaganzas or anything going on?
I don't know, actually. I flew to St. Lucia and back, which was a very nice trip. It was my first A330-200 series flight, bit different from our 300 series, mainly because they've come from another outfit we've acquired from someone who didn't need them anymore. So there's just a few anomalies, not quite up to the same software standard in some respects as our bright and shiny 330-300. So that was an interesting flight. And of course, I don't normally operate Gatwick St. Lucia. So it's just, different. Gatwick's not so easy for me to get to. I'm not so familiar with the airport. And St. Lucia is, it's a nice tropical island, but they're not exactly overflowing with airport facilities. So it's always a challenge. And then we came home. I've only had 2 days off, one of which seemed to be occupied 99% with a rival podcast. And I'm sad to say that you had two of your crew who were being, co-opted by this bunch. So,
Was Steph able to join that?
yeah, Steph was
Yeah,
there as
for a
well.
little
Oh, I
while.
thought you weren't going to be able to go on that show.
I
Oh.
didn't think so either, but I had time to sneak in between
Oh,
doing
okay.
stuff at work. So,
Well, your way was much better, Steph, because you think this show is long. That show was longer. It took forever. I don't know. Just seemed to go on for hours.
Yeah, sadly, I wasn't able to make it yesterday because I was flying all darn day. It was a very
You were in great
12-hour
voice.
day.
We enjoyed your rendition of when
well,
shepherds wash their socks by night. That was
I wish that I'd had a little bit more time to prepare something very clever and pithy like you had suggested. And I swear I spent hours trying to think of like lyrics and different tunes and Christmassy tunes, and I couldn't come up with anything. And I'm thinking, this is not my talent. So-
well, never mind.
Yeah.
So
well, see,
it was
I missed that part of the show, so I'll look forward to hearing that in the finished product.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
going to be on Christmas Day, I think, isn't it?
I have no idea.
I don't know. Hey, Armando,
I
he's
don't
in the
get
chat
these
room.
details.
I'm not losing control of my crew. I lost control of the crew a long,
He's never
long time
really
ago.
had-
Yeah, I've really never had control.
Yeah,
He may have invited us to be here, but that's about where it ends.
That's it.
excellent.
Yeah. All right. So again, I look forward to watching the PTUK Christmas extravaganza show and hearing from everybody on that show. Not only PTUK folks, but plane safety podcasting people and airplane geek people and representatives from APG. Thank you very much for presenting us. All right.
That was easy. Anyway, I'm going to be probably disappearing before the end of this show because I'm heading back to St. Lucia tomorrow. Slightly longer trip this time, so we don't just fly to St. Lucia. We then overnight, and then we do a shuttle to, I don't know, one of the other islands. It's not Grenada, Tobago. I think we go to Tobago and back. And then we have another night, and then we have the aircraft to take home. So the slightly annoying thing is that little shuttle, which is two like 30-minute legs, it takes us nearly 2 hours to drive from the resort where we stay to the airport.
Wow.
And 2 hours to drive?
Yeah, I know. We're at the opposite end of the island.
I was going to say, the island can't even be that.
Well, the roads aren't very good, so you don't go very fast. I think the coach is steam powered. In fact, tell you what, they were pretty neat. They had an accident on the island, which blocked the main road which we needed. And as we set off, that we got a police escort through all the traffic for about halfway down the island. We still got there a bit late, but anyway, by the by. So that little short trip. So 2 hours, we sort of have an hour to wind the airplane up, 30 minutes to fly it. We land it. I think they turn it round in 2 hours. And then we then fly it home for a half an hour and then 2 hours back to the hotel. By the time we've done all that,
at least 8 hours.
Absolutely. It's a full working day. And because it's just little shuttle flights, we don't get meals and there's nothing to eat. We're lucky if we get a bottle of water. By the time we get back to the hotel, the restaurants are closed. It's just a pain.
Welcome to my world.
Yeah, this is why I love long haul normally. I mean, this is like short haul, right? It just reminds me, no, I don't want to do this. This is horrible.
Well, I don't think you're going to ever have to.
At the Caribbean. No. I mean,
yeah.
I can think of worse places to fly.
Yeah.
That's true, and it will be able to do a nice lot of hand flying, and we're doing visual approaches or RNAVs, so that's brilliant. So yeah, all that's fine. Oh, I guess Dana's here.
Yeah, here, let me mute. There we go.
His arrival. He's announced his own arrival there. Yes.
Mute before coming on, please.
Brilliant.
I muted you for you.
I thought I had the mic switch pushed down. I am sorry about that.
Oh, that's all right. We got to hear you adjusting the blinds and everything else. So,
hi,
what were you
Dana.
saying?
Hi, Dana. Who knows? Nick has a rough life in the Caribbean coming up.
Life is tough.
I would have been on time, but Julie had to bring a car home for later. So, and then she, of course, timed it perfectly for the time the show was starting. So I had to run her back to work real quick.
Oh, okay. No problem. No problem.
How is everybody?
Dana, how have you been?
Fantastic.
Good.
Yeah, doing
You had to leave us from the last show on the early side, so
I'm here for the whole show this time, except for the few minutes I missed in the front end. So.
Okay. How about have you been doing any flying this week?
Oh, well, the update, let's see, what have I done this week? No, I've done absolutely nothing. I actually am on a regular line this month. And I've been off since the 29th of November. I start a 4-day next week. I go out on Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, come back Saturday early afternoon. And then I'm off for 2 days. And I go out Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Then I have a Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And then I go out on the 24th. So that weekend I'm heading up to Boston. And 24th, I go out at about 1 in the afternoon. So I'm going to fly out of Boston on Monday morning on the 24th. And I get to spend a wonderful weekend at home in Boston with the family. So I really don't miss out on Christmas. And then I work 6 straight days over Christmas, which, okay, whatever. I'm off New Year's. So
the Christmas cheer.
Yeah, it's working out well for this upcoming month. I have absolutely not one app for my first line as a captain. It worked out pretty freaking well.
And when you think about it, Christmas is really a holiday for Christians, and you're not Christian.
Yes, but I am married into a Roman Catholic family,
Okay, never
and
mind.
I'm gonna miss the seven fishes, which I absolutely love. And it. To be honest with you, it's the cheer of the holiday. It's the spirit of the holiday. I absolutely love.
Yeah.
It's being with family, which I enjoy, especially my in-laws, her family. They're awesome to be with, enjoy the holiday with, and they've had such a long tradition within their family between the seven fishes, and that's the biggest thing for me. It's not even Christmas Day; it's Christmas Eve. And for those that don't know about the seven fishes, it's an Italian, I believe it's an Italian Roman Catholic or Catholic tradition that on Christmas Eve you have various fishes. So it's just, I maybe it's a Boston tradition. I do know I've seen it other places. So
I think it might be an Italian one. I think you're right.
I think it's an Italian one. So it's very enjoyable, and this year I'm going to miss out on it, but that's okay. At least I'll be able to be home that weekend. So everything's cool.
You can go to
month.
Captain D's and buy 7 fish fillets, and you'll have your 7 fishes.
Yeah, well, I was thinking about trying to get a meetup going, but guess what? I doubt anybody's going to be available in Columbus because that's where I'm going to be
On Christmas Day?
Christmas Eve and Christmas Day.
Yeah.
Columbus, Ohio.
Well, you never know.
Yep,
You never know.
Never know.
All right.
But yeah, that's my update. How was my timing? It was about good for the update before you end up into the coffee fund?
I was just about to mention what's been going on with me. So, yeah, perfect.
Awesome. Thank you.
Let's see. I'm on a 4-day trip right now, and it's a pretty decent trip. The first day, just one leg up to Cincinnati, deadheaded to Bradley. Yesterday was my long day. Went from Bradley to Minneapolis to Philadelphia, Philadelphia to Detroit, and got in late last night. Not late last night, but it felt late. It was dark. And the nice thing about it is we got to stay at the Westin Hotel right at the airport in Detroit. So that's always kind of a treat that you don't have to worry about getting in a van, going to the hotel, and then meeting the next morning for the pickup time and driving in a van. You can just say, hey, I'll see you at the airplane tomorrow. And that's always kind of as I said, a treat for us. And today, one leg here to Nashville from Detroit. I should have been in about an hour. Well, actually, we only ended up being about 25 minutes late in total. But we had a little issue. Everything was going swimmingly, getting the pre-flight accomplished in Detroit. And then my first officer said, hey, Jeff, something's going on with the overhead annunciator panel. So it's kind of like the idiot light system in your car, although it's a little bit more complicated than that. Where we have all these messages that are displayed if something is going wrong, or just information messages as well. And it has 2 small little screens where all this information is displayed. And the screen on the left, well, the one closest to me, was blank. And I've seen this before. Usually it just is a matter of pushing a couple up and down buttons and the status queue button.
Control Alt Delete. That's
it's like Control Alt Delete.
Control Alt Delete.
That's what we did after.
Afterwards.
Yeah, after we tried that and it didn't work. That didn't work. And then it said, threw up a little message that said left OAP screen in op or whatever. I went, oh yeah, well, we know that. So we pulled a bunch of circuit breakers. I talked to people in Atlanta about which ones to pull. That didn't do it. That usually fixes it if the other thing doesn't. And then they said, why don't you just turn the power off? So we did that, and that didn't help. And finally, local maintenance came by, and they took the panel out and disconnected 2 Canon plugs, reconnected them. That didn't help. And then finally they decided, you know what? I think the thing is broken. So they said, I said, okay, yeah. So what are we going to do? And they said, well, they're checking to see if they have a part. And they of course didn't have the actual big panel in stock there in Detroit, but they had an airplane, another MD-90 in the hangar that was being worked on for something else, I think. And they said, we can cannibalize that airplane and grab that part off of that and then drive it over. So we got out of there. I guess we pushed back just shy of an hour after our scheduled pushback time. Then, of course, we had to go to the de-ice area because it's Detroit and it's December, and they de-iced us, and then we were on our way. But as I said, luckily it wasn't a long flight, and we got into Nashville only about 25 minutes late. So,
you did well.
Say again?
You did well.
Oh, thank you. Just warning to you all, I'm not sure what my signal's like to you, but you guys are kind of breaking up on occasion. And
I think it's yours.
Yeah, I'm sure it is because this is the hotel Wi-Fi, and that's what we just have to deal with, I guess. So I do apologize up front for that. Okay, I'm going to shift to. I go back out again next week, another Tuesday through Friday. Oh, by the way, tomorrow, one leg back from Nashville in the morning. I should be home at 9 o'clock in the morning. So it's kind of
nice.
Nice.
Sweet.
Yeah, you don't normally see this kind of trip in the pot there, do you? But I jumped on it. And next week is very similar. Not quite as nice as this one, but it's pretty good. Anywho, John Stewart wrote in, and he had a...
He did, like famous John Stewart?
Not that John Stewart. Well, let's just pretend it was him.
Sure.
And he was very interested in listening to our show.
Hey, who's John Stewart?
But John Stewart, he does a show on television, or used to do a show. Does he still do it?
Yeah.
Comedy Channel.
Yeah, it was the Daily Show.
He thinks this is a comedy show, does he?
Yeah. Well, if you watch it, don't you laugh?
Yes.
Anyway, this one is his last name is spelled a little bit differently, I think.
Oh, I see it now. I think it's yeah.
So Steuart. He had a question about. So he listens to the show using the wonderful Airline Pilot Guy app for your iPhone or Android device, and I didn't realize this, but apparently you can only listen to the shows if you're connected, if you're online. If you're not connected, then it doesn't store the show file on board the phone, and so you can't listen to it if you don't have a signal. And so I gave him some suggestions for apps that he can use, that he can download the app and download the show, and then he can listen to it when he's offline. And that made me think, we haven't really talked about this much at all. And so I thought I'd just mention that there are many, many different ways to listen to our show. And the first is the APG app. Again, that doesn't have the ability to play offline. Same thing with the APG website. You can play it directly from the website. The company that we use to store our audio files, Libsyn, Liberated Syndication, they have a podcast app that you can download. I think it's for both Android and iOS. And then once you have downloaded their podcast, it's called Podcast Source app. And you can then search for the Airline Pilot Guy show. And that app allows you to download episodes, and then you can listen to it when you're flying or when you're away from a internet source. Apple Podcasts app, same thing. And that's what we call a podcast client app that you can download the shows and then listen offline. I'm sure Android has some apps as well to do the same thing. Just off the top of my head, some other podcasting client apps: Pocket Casts, Overcast, which is my personal favorite, Google Podcasts. And then also we're on a multitude of streaming services.
10 points.
Thank you. Stitcher Radio, TuneIn Radio, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Podbean. And now, this is news, and this just happened very recently. They invited our show to be one of the beta tests, podcasting tests on Pandora. So if you're a Pandora user, you can find our show on Pandora. And if you want to watch video as well as audio, you can watch us on the YouTube channel and just look for, it's actually my name, Jeff Nielsen, I think is the channel for the YouTube. You can go on YouTube and do a search for the Airline Pilot Guy show and find us there. Now, a warning, the recent, and when I say recent, within the last couple of years, since we've been doing this live streaming on YouTube, it is not a edited nor polished show. It's what we call APG in the raw. And It's mostly what you'd hear on the audio-only podcast, but you'll get some extras, like when we screw things up and we have technical issues, and when we take breaks, and we have some pre-show banter, and then usually some post-show banter as well. So if you're interested in seeing more of the behind-the-scenes thing and hanging out with the great people in our chat room, you hear us talking it all the time on video, talking about people in the chat room. We have that going on, and if you have a chance to do it, if you happen to be in a place that you can watch the show live and log on to the YouTube channel and join the folks in the chat room, I think you'll really have a good time. It's a great bunch of people, and some not so great people as well. I'm just looking over there at the list of people.
We won't name names, though.
Yeah,
I mean, we don't want anyone to feel bad.
Yeah, you have to take the chaff from the wheat. But...
Yes, it's biblical.
Very good.
Anyway, so anything to add or subtract from how to listen to our show?
It sounds like we're becoming really popular, or at least you're becoming popular.
I don't know about that. I mean, think about it. There are some other aviation podcasts that are on all these things too, and come on.
Well, I haven't worked out if you can get it through Amazon Echo yet.
I don't know.
You might need a plug-in or whatever they call it. The
Shut up, woman. Excuse me.
I think she's answering you now.
Now they do have the Amazon Echo has that thing where they have the snippets. I forgot what they call that.
Well, so I actually got a notification from. I don't really listen to. It's not a podcast; it's a blog that I follow, and somehow the guy who writes this blog was able to arrange it so that if you ask Alexa or Amazon Echo to read his blog, the Echo will read it to you. He chose a nice British gentleman's voice to read it in. He is not British, which is
I would suppose that if you said, "Hey, whatever name that you want to say," I don't want to mess up anybody's.
Listen to this.
Okay. Yeah,
that's my Amazon Echo, and all I did was say, "Play the Airline Pilot Guy Show podcast."
Woohoo!
So there you go.
I've got to work out how to stop it.
Echo, stop playing.
Stop.
Yeah,
Anyway.
but I have a funny feeling Nick's Echo can't hear us.
Yeah, I can't. So it's unfortunate.
Well, that's a problem.
Telepathy, maybe.
Yeah.
Someone else's Echo is going crazy right now.
Hey Siri.
Don't stop. Oh, mine's in my pocket thing.
Brilliant. I managed to stop it. That took some effort.
Speaking of
can
Siri,
just
let me shut her
Tell it
off.
to stop.
Let's see.
Yeah, I did, but she couldn't hear me over the noise of Jeff.
Hey Siri. Play the Airline Pilot Guy Show.
What are you talking about?
Okay, Airline Pilot Guy, Aviation podcast now playing.
I'm Radio Roger, and you're listening to the Airline Pilot Guy Show.
Yay.
Oh, technology.
Unbelievable.
We love it.
Anyway, so there you go. Lots
Now
of different ways to listen to us and also engage with us if you'd like.
See, now you enforce me to look at my phone. And now all of a sudden, see, I'm drinking this nice bone broth for my lunch, but I get that Chick-fil-A email, order a cup of peppermint cheer, which is their peppermint stick, what are they called?
Is it a milkshake?
Milkshake.
Yeah.
The milkshake. Oh my God, those things are to die for. So now you've made me really hungry just by talking about technology. Thanks.
Well, please accept our apology for that, Dana.
That's okay. I'm still craving Chinese food from the other day. I think Nick will know what I'm talking about.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. Main man Micah and his yen, I should say, for a bit of Chinese. It was great, wasn't it?
It was. Make sure you listen to the.
Wait a minute.
We're calling it Christmas extravaganza.
Yen is
on that one.
Japanese.
Oh well.
It is very good. It is, and it's such a stupid thing. 1 yen. I mean, it's like an aluminium washer. But there you go.
Hey, main man, Micah, I've got to tell you, being from the Northeast and of the same beliefs, I understand exactly why you love Chinese food. It's just seems to be a thing in the Northeast for us.
Well, I love it too.
Well, listen, make sure you listen to the PTUK Christmas extravaganza because at least that part of it is definitely worth listening to.
At least that part.
I can't speak for anything I may or may not have contributed to the show that day.
Well, I'll have plenty of time this evening driving down to just north of Orlando. I delayed my departure this afternoon so I could be a part of this. So I'll be driving into the wee hours. So that will, I'm sure, keep me entertained on the drive.
But it
down
won't
there.
be released until Christmas.
Oh man, I was getting
Delayed gratification.
Do you have your recorder running, Dana?
I do.
Okay, awesome. Because this is going to be one of those shows where I think I'm going to have to use everybody's individual tracks. Ugh.
And to give you a point of reference, Jeff, obviously, I didn't do my clack, but just when you started talking about your hotel internet Wi-Fi being intermittent, just at the end of that is exactly where I started my recorder.
Okay, good. That's a good point of reference. Thank you. James Taylor, by the way, we have all kinds of celebrity people in our chat room. That's another reason to be in our chat room and watch our live recording. James Taylor says that he asked Amazon for the Airline Pilot Guy podcast, and he got "Diamonds Are Forever." I like that song.
Diamonds, yeah. That's quite a compliment.
I think all the guys think about Dr. Steph now.
Yeah.
I'm going to give her a diamond. He already has one.
I do.
Yes. All right. And one more administrative note. Let's see. Timo, our German-Japanese, or German in Japan, working on his PhD in aviation or something, sent us some audio feedback last week. He said he's going to be in the Jacksonville, Florida area, I believe he said, St. Augustine. He may be there right now, actually. I think he said the 6th through the 12th or something like that. Mm-hmm. And he was asking for suggestions, places to fly, destinations to fly for a $100 hamburger. And I just wanted to thank Dispatcher Mike for following up with Timo. And so he has gotten in contact and given him some suggestions for.
Yes. Dispatcher Mike is much more intelligent than I am because I'm a member of that same group too. So I probably could have gone there to ask, but
which group is that?
It's a Facebook group.
East Coast pilots?
Yeah.
Okay.
So if you live on the East Coast of the United States and you're a pilot, it's a good group to be a part of, but good resource for knowing some of those local things. So my thanks to him because I called him out on the show to provide some answers, and
you did, and he came through for us.
He was much more resourceful than I was.
Yeah, he's a big supporter of our show, and we're a big supporter of his as well. Flying and Life.
Oh, yeah, East Coast Private Pilots, I think, is the group name.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very good. All right. Anything else before we move on with the coffee fund?
I'm good.
All right.
None for me.
And since we are in the Christmas season-ish, actually Advent, but we're getting kind of in that Christmas spirit, right?
Yeah, but we're actually in Hanukkah right now.
Okay, well, I don't have a Hanukkah song, so I'm going to play this.
Adam Sandler.
I don't happen to have that one available right now. But I did find this just a little while ago, and it is from the YouTube audio library, and that means it is copyright free, so I won't get dinged for playing somebody's work without authorization. So we're going to talk about the Coffee Fund, which is your way to support the show financially. And one way to do it is using the Coffee Fund Classic method, and that is basically our PayPal donation page. And since the last show, Jason Payne contributed. So thank you, sir, for participating in the Coffee Fund cadre, the Coffee Fund group. And the other way to participate in the Coffee Fund cadre is to become a patron of our show via patreon.com. And since the last show, Hamish Keb, or Hamish, I always mispronounce that, he has been a patron of ours, but he bumped up his contribution 30%. Went from $1 to $1.30 per episode. So So thank you very much for doing that, Hamish. And if you want to learn more about the Coffee Fund, head over to airlinepilotguy.com/coffee.
Stand by for news.
Our first item in the news folder is an incident. An El Al Boeing 787-900 departed Tel Aviv on March 29th, 2018. So it was a little while ago.
Is there such a thing as a 787-900? Is it
I'm sorry, a 787-9. Thank you.
Making sure we stay on top of that.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. We need all the help we can get. A 787-9. Registration, and if you're not sure if it's a 900 or a -9, look up 4 X-ray Echo Delta Bravo, and it'll give you all the information that you care to know about this particular airframe. It was performing flight 27 from Tel Aviv, Israel, to Newark, New Jersey, with 282 passengers and 18 crew. It was climbing out of Tel Aviv when the captain noticed that the FMS indicated a substantially higher optimal. Let me try that again. The FMS indicated a substantially higher optimal flight level than anticipated and planned. The captain then examined the reasons for this and discovered that a zero fuel weight of 40 tons lower than the actual zero fuel weight had been entered into the FMS. The captain immediately understood that the takeoff performance computation had also been wrong, concluded to the severity of the occurrence, notified the airline's operations center and the fleet manager, who in turn involved Israel's Accident Investigation Unit. The aircraft continued to Newark for a safe landing without further incident. And the reason why we're talking about it now is that on November 26th, so just last month, the Accident Investigation, the AIAI, released their final report. And basically, I'm not going to read the whole thing. We'll have the link to this in the show notes, and this is from the Aviation Herald. The captain, when entering the data in the flight management system, as mentioned before, the weight, the zero fuel weight, which is the weight of the airplane and passengers and crew and everything but fuel, basically. That's a figure that we use. And then, of course, you add the fuel to that, and then you get your gross weight. Was now, I guess a ton in Israel is about 2,000 pounds. That's what I've been kind of my rule of thumb. So let's say approximately 80,000 pounds or maybe more, less than the figure that he should have used. He said that he did notice when he was on the takeoff roll that when the computed speeds for that much lower weight occurred and he initiated the rotation, that it seemed a little bit more sluggish than he was used to. By the way, all 4 crew members in the cockpit that day were all relatively new on this jet. That I guess they had only gotten that fleet at El Al recently, and none of them had a lot of experience on the airplane. So that was part of the contribution to this incident. But apparently nobody noticed that he entered the wrong data. The cross-check, I guess, didn't catch that. And as I said, when he was rotating the airplane, it was very sluggish. I guess the 787-9 has a system, which is one of the benefits of a fly-by-wire type of system, where the computers can say, I'm not going to let you rotate the nose any more than you've rotated it, because if you do, you're going to drag the tail. You're going to have a tail strike, which can be a very dangerous thing. So what happened was it lifted off, but it didn't climb very quickly for a while, because what the airplane did was allowed the engines to accelerate the airplane to a safe speed before it allowed it to resume kind of a more normal profile, climb profile. So that, I guess, was his first indication that something was a little bit amiss. And then the second thing is when they were checking for their optimal altitude, it said that they could make it up to flight level 380. And he kind of knew from his limited experience that this airplane with this particular flight segment, usually it could only make it up to flight level 340, 34,000 feet. And so he thought, something doesn't seem quite right. Why is it that we can get all the way up to flight level 380? And when he realized the mistake, he recruited people and kind of fessed up, and probably had to, because I think nowadays with the systems that we have on airplanes, it was going to let people know anyway, right?
Yeah, well, and I'm sure this is one of those things where you're really better off just saying, hey, look, this is what happened. We all realize it. Let's figure out why it happened. Make sure it doesn't happen again.
Could have been a very, if it had been an older airplane without this kind of a safety system to prevent a tail strike, I mean, it could have been a really bad thing.
Who knows what the calculations were that led to that being off, but fortunately it wasn't off by more.
Right.
So you need to figure out why you're missing the cross check there that would catch an inaccurate calculation.
Right. And, we've been talking on this show in past a few episodes about errors made in entering data in the flight management computers. And that is one of the reasons why I'm kind of glad that Acme uses a system where our data is computed for us by a separate department in our company. It's like a centralized department that takes all the data and basically sends us all the performance data via our ACARS printer. And then once that is transmitted to us, then we use some of the performance figures for our takeoff speeds and that kind of thing.
Do you ever double check that data or recalculate it?
No, we don't have any real way of doing that, but we do know, Dana and I can tell you that there are certain, like we'll get preliminary data from our flight plan, like our zero fuel weight, the passenger load that they're expecting, cargo, that kind of thing. And when we set up our flight management system computer, during our pre-flight duties, and then when we get the numbers, and if the zero fuel weight figure is considerably more or less, then that is something that Dana and I go, well, why is it like so much different than what they thought it was going to be originally? And then usually it's something like, well, only 10 fewer passengers showed up than we were expecting, and that's why we're a little bit lighter than they were anticipating us to be.
Yeah, and another thing is, they've kind of, I don't know how you feel about this, Jeff, but used to be that they used to tell you how many passengers you have on the airplane, so you could actually compare that to the weight data record that comes off the printer. But a lot of agents do it's not required anymore, and they don't do that anymore. They won't give you the number, and they find it as a inconvenience. But that was another check that I thought was really good, to compare that the numbers that we're getting in the computer system versus the numbers that are actually on the aircraft, gives us a more accurate account as to that the numbers that we are getting are in fact valid. So you have trust system now. I mean, in the old days, they would sit there and they would key in all the passengers that have been onboarded. They show them on via their seat number. Now it's basically just like if you go to the cash register at any grocery store, you scan your barcode, and you walk through with your goods. I mean, that's basically what you're doing with passengers and cargo now. So the numbers you have to touch that we see are very accurate, Dr. Steph, at least as far as I can tell. And we actually, one additional step that I think most people on the 88 do, most captains do for sure, is we have a speed card. Gives our all of our numbers, our our flap retract speed and clean speed, and et cetera, et cetera. So when we're setting up the FMS, we'll look at that number and set up that card, and they'll give us a general ballpark what the numbers should be too. So it's another sort of a non-official check versus a balancing check to see if the numbers that we're getting are putting us in the right ballpark. So
what's interesting with this was the captain entered the wrong figure, And he then realized he'd entered the wrong figure, and he corrected himself. But when he retyped in the new figure, he actually re-entered the wrong figure a second time. The first officer beside him, whose job it was to monitor and check his entry, didn't check either inputs. And there was another captain on the flight deck who heard the first captain who was doing the typing say, "Oh, I made a mistake there," and re-entered. So he just assumed he'd put the correct figure in the second time. No one actually checked that figure to make sure that it was right. So there were 3 guys there who all missed what is a critical, safety critical number going into the system.
Yes.
I have to take myself off mute to respond to things, but
You thought you would have known that by now. We need to brief that every time.
Yes.
Safety critical selection there.
Yeah, exactly. No, I
Is that
agree. I
kind
think
of like
that's-
taking the cover off the needle before you use it?
Yeah, I don't seem to have trouble remembering to do that.
Okay.
Interesting aside there, though. They, I don't know if it's different vendors that we use for some of our medical equipment recently, but the trays still come that we use for the procedures still come with the exact same equipment on it, same needles and everything, but they've been changing the color of the needle hubs, which is really kind of distracting because I'm used to looking for certain colors for certain size needles. And it's just interesting that that's not standard. I thought that was fairly standard because I've never seen these different colored needle hubs before.
Keeps you on your toes.
So, thinking of ways to prevent making, I mean, it'd be very obvious if you picked up the wrong one.
Oh, I don't know. They got those ones off eBay.
I don't know.
The helmet size doesn't matter.
Overstock.com.
Never mind. I'm not even going to go there. I had something to say to Nick about all of that a while back, and now I don't remember, but
check, double check. It's funny, isn't it? Because we get so many tasks to do. Sometimes it's really hard to slow yourself down for the really important ones because you're working on usually a pretty short time period to get everything done. And it really takes some effort to say to yourself, hang on a minute, let's go back to normal speed now because these are bloody important. Let's make sure we get them right. And
I'm sorry,
Jeff. Yeah, go ahead.
No, I interrupted you. I apologize.
No, I was just finishing. I was just saying, and this crew, they were under a severe time constraint, and not all the pilots were on the flight deck when they started, and there were a lot of distractions for the captain. But that is the time really to throw your departure time out of the window and just say, look, that's not important anymore. It's a really tough thing to do as well, and just say, look, let's just make sure we get all this right today.
You're so right. And you have to deliberately force yourself to slow down. Today was a good case in point for me. After all this delay and keeping everybody informed of, step by step, what was happening, what we think is going to happen, when we think we're going to be going. And then finally, when they said, oh, okay, everything's fixed. And then, okay, let's go. And then, okay, we still need to do these things. And now we have to kind of like make sure we're doing everything we're supposed to do because we're still really in a hurry, sort of, to get these people to Nashville as quickly as we can. However, as Captain Nick just said, that's when usually you make the mistakes when you're rushing like that.
Well, that's really all well and good, but it's interesting too from the passenger standpoint in those cases because most passengers, I would say, are not thinking about that type of stuff at all. It's the only thing on their mind is, oh my gosh, I'm going to miss my connection. I'm going to miss whatever it is that I'm trying to get to my destination for. I saw that from the passenger standpoint. Actually, just this past weekend when we went to Tampa, coming back, a lovely Airbus. I don't know exactly what happened, but pushed back from the gate. Starting up the number 2 engine, there was some sort of computer fault or something similar to like what you had happen today, Jeff. I don't know. So we had to go back to the gate to get the mechanics to come take a look at it. Took us forever to get back to a gate for some reason. We were actually like just trying to get out of other, aircraft way for a little while. I don't know why they didn't have another gate for us. We had just pushed back. Who knows? Anyway, so that whole process took about 45 minutes, and the guy across the aisle from me the whole time was just on the phone with the airline, panicking about how he's going to miss his connection. What is he going to do? What are they going to do to compensate him? Blah, 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 blah. I was like, dude, like just
chill, man.
Chill.
Yeah,
it's going to be fine. It's going to be fine.
That's what I
Let's make sure they take the time to figure out whatever the fault is, get it fixed or not get it fixed. everyone's going to be safe here on the ground for the moment. It's fine.
That's what I usually say. Welcome aboard Delta. Oops. Acme 1443 same day service to Nashville, Tennessee.
Nice one.
You know, I just want to finish with this. I think this the story. I think the big thing in the story that we're talking about here is it's amazing. You're talking about a brand new and very new technology airplane, the 787. It's amazing how such a small error can be such a huge deal. And as you mentioned right at the beginning, Jeff, if it was your aircraft, my aircraft, we're probably dragging the tail. So the benefit of the new aircraft, and with all the great technology, it does take a lot of the load off the pilots, but it also gives you some protections. And that's where the advantage truly was, is that even though there was an error made, the aircraft was smart enough to recognize it and prevent any type of major issue going on. So,
yep. So true. So true. All right, let's move on to the second item. Item B. This involved an Airbus A320 at Macau in China. Capital Airlines, Beijing. Registration Bravo 6952, performing flight 5759 from Beijing to Macau. And they were on approach to Macau's runway 34 and into the flare when the aircraft encountered wind shear. Quotes. And I think maybe they actually did, looking at some of the winds here later in this account. They touched down hard. The crew initiated a go-around, received indications of a left engine, that's a CFM56, failure, and they were suspecting gear damage. They declared a mayday. The aircraft diverted to Shenzhen, China, and landed on runway 34 about 40 minutes after the rejected landing. The aircraft became disabled on the runway with both nose wheels missing from the nose gear strut. Didn't we just talk about something like this last episode?
Yeah, we had the pictures on the last show, but we didn't have any blurb.
Oh, okay. Was
it was the same thing?
Oh,
Yep.
The same instance. Okay. Oh, I should have picked
But
up.
I was intrigued at the time. I said, if someone could tell me how hard they landed, and now we know.
So exactly how hard did they land, Nick?
3.4 G. Whoa!
That's a hard touchdown.
That's
That was, was that the first time, the second time, or the third time? Because I think they touched down hard on the mains one time, and then they touched down hard again a second time on the mains. And the third time, which is the charm, they touched down on the nose gear first, and that's what basically destroyed the nose wheels.
I think 3.4 G was the worst and probably the third.
I think you're right.
Impact.
And how that thing, that's testament to how sturdy that nose gear structure is, because that is a heck of a hard impact on it. And no wonder the nose wheels basically shredded and were ingested by both engines. I guess
that's why they had a engine failure, fault.
Yeah.
The wind. This is the thing that I'm wondering. They were landing on runway 34. The winds were 170 to 190 degrees, gusting to 22 knots. I'm thinking that doesn't. I've never flown into this airport. Maybe there is some kind of a restriction that you can only land one direction, but that doesn't seem like the correct direction to land with winds like this.
I would agree. You can land both directions. I'm almost certain at Macau. It's not a problem. I don't know whether there's a restriction on the approach on the other way, but I'm looking 22017.
And it looks like it was varying too. Like one of these is like 160 to 290. So
yeah,
and it's a midst of a thunderstorm, thunder showers.
Variable 15 to 25.
Yeah,
any direction at 15 to 25 knots. Wow, horrid.
Winds were not favorable.
No. So I have to say I'm kind of in two minds as to whether it was the right thing to leave with an engine failure and possibly with the other engine damaged. Whether he should have stayed and had another go and just plonked it on the ground there, or whether he was right to go to Shenzhen. Interesting, because of course he could easily have lost that second engine on the way.
Right. Yeah.
Difficult decision.
Yeah. Well, I bet they didn't realize that they had an issue with the second engine potentially.
Yeah. Yeah. I know they wrinkled the fuselage because I've seen another picture, not here, that we're looking at, of the side of the fuselage showing deformation of the skin there where the fuselage is bent.
And that's usually an indication that we're not going to be able to use this airplane ever again.
Yeah, it wasn't very old, was it?
I don't think so.
No. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, well.
All right. Well, now we know what happened. Item C, another Airbus, an A320-214 Frontier Airlines. Flight 260 returned to land at Las Vegas McCarran International Airport. After the number 2, it was a CFM56 engine again. Number 2 engine fan cowls separated, and the reverser C duct doors opened on takeoff. We have a nice little picture of it from right side passenger window with the you can see a lot of the engine exposed because the cowling is up and torn off. We have some audio too, so you want to listen to that?
Yeah.
All right.
Flight 260 at 5 script, response to good west, running 26 right, line up away.
26 right, line up away, Frontier.
Flight 260 maintain the separation, running 26 right before takeoff.
Super takes off, maintain the separation, Frontier 260.
The American 437 maintains the separation, Frontier 162 coordinate 26 right before takeoff. Frontier Flight 260, kind of flight 60. 260, good day.
Departure Frontier 260 with you at a 2.5 for out of that, let's hit.
Frontier Flight 260 Las Vegas, departure radar contact.
Frontier Flight 1096.
Go ahead.
You're the only Frontier out there. We just got a phone call saying there's something off your right engine. There's a number 2 engine fan call latch. Something it's undone. Can you check to see if that's you?
Absolutely. We'll pull off to the left here and then we'll call our maintenance. Thank you.
By the way, that is not the incident aircraft. That's another Frontier that has not yet taken off.
Good. Yeah, because I got your company that's 3 miles off the departure, and it could have been him, but of course we want to make sure it's not you. So if you need to pull over, then you want to make the left turn here for the Quebec one there.
Yeah, we'll do that right here, Quebec 1, Frontier 1096.
Fairway 169 to Alpha 6, going to Bravo 23. Spirit Wings 169, Las Vegas down. Slight right turn, use Bravo 6 and a Charlie, call the ramp.
Bravo 6 Charlie to the ramp, Spirit 169. And it did look like when that Frontier took off that there was something on the right wing. I couldn't make it out, though.
Oh, on his right wing?
Yeah, if it was a call, that would make sense. But just kind of at a fast glance, that's what it looked like.
And Frontier Flight 96, I don't know if you heard the Spirit say that he thinks that it's your company that departed that had something with his right wing.
997, rate 26 right, let's take off.
Yeah, departure Frontier 260. I think we got something wrong with one of our engines. They're saying there's something on fire or something out there.
Frontier Flight 260, someone in the airport said that they just told us no, your second engine cowling appears open or something like that.
Okay, we need to declare emergency back to the airport.
Frontier Flight 260, roger, amend the L2, climb maintain 7,000, fly present heading, would you like runway 26 left?
Yeah, it'd be great. 7,000 Frontier.
Yo, 1675, ready to go.
675, ready to go to the full length, 1675, wind check 2404, next 26 right, clear for takeoff.
Clear for takeoff, 26 ready to go to 1675.
Frontier Flight 260, turn left, heading 070, vector runway 26 left.
070, Frontier 260.
1021, climb maintain, flow level 190.
190, Southwest 1021.
Frontier Flight 260, clear to Las Vegas Airport via radar vectors, climb and maintain 7,000. When able, stay fuel remaining and tolls on board.
Yeah, fuel remaining, we got 26 and there's 166 on board.
Frontier Flight 260, roger that, continue to left turn, heading 070 and contact approach on 135.0.
350, Frontier 260.
Well, I was going to play a little bit more of it, but somebody takes off on that runway and saying, "Yeah, you got FOD on the runway." I was kind of surprised that they continued to use that runway for takeoff after they had reports that part of the cowling was thrown off the number 2 engine.
Yeah, you think that'd be one of the first things they would.
Yeah, and the other thing is, did you notice? You could tell the concern in the voice of the Frontier flight that had the engine issue with the cowling.
Yeah, on the initial when they came back and said we've got something wrong.
It was not his normal, calm, collected kind of voice, I'm sure. This is not the first time, and we've talked about several of these incidents involving this particular engine on this particular airframe. Cowling latches are kind of hard to see from what we can understand. You almost have to get underneath the engine to make sure.
Because the Airbus cowlings have opened in the past, but they're not the only ones. 73 cowlings have done the same. I'm sure we had. But Airbus have come out with a modification, which is in the process of being fitted, I guess, to all of the aircraft, which require additional latches to be checked. We already have a maintenance procedure so that every time the cowl is open, it's written in the tech log and has to be written in the tech log when the cowling is secured again. So we try and mitigate it with that. And I just make my knees dirty every time I do a walk around by getting on my knees and peering under the engine. That's the only way to see whether the latches are all flush and make sure everything's secure. So
even on your jet, huh? I mean, they hang that low.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, the 330 engines are pretty low. So with the amount of publicity and the number of incidents, I'm just amazed that guys aren't doing their walk-arounds sufficiently well, and the engine is still missing these checks.
Yeah, I know that every time I go and do an exterior inspection, I pay particular attention to the cowling latches just to make sure that they're all the way they're supposed to be.
Yeah.
Yeah, and one of the things with this is, they had talked to another Frontier aircraft that was taxiing out, and obviously somebody somewhere along the line had some way had opened up or used those latches. So I'm guessing it's probably maintenance, and they probably couldn't remember or missed a procedure that they didn't close the latches, and they called the wrong aircraft.
I think the reason why they called the wrong aircraft is because somebody up in the tower cab got information that there was a Frontier flight that had a cowling separate, and so they weren't sure which
it was.
Frontier. Yeah, so
I don't know who saw it initially. Yeah. It was just kind of secondhand information at that point, I think.
Yeah, I don't know if it was a company calling or, because that has happened, that the company calls and says, "Hey, can you have this flight come back, or this airplane come back because we forgot something or didn't do something." So that's.
But the bottom line is, regardless if there was maintenance performed on it or not, we all know that the ultimate responsibility is that the pilot performing the exterior walk around, the exterior inspection, is responsible for ensuring that all those things are properly latched. And that's the reason why Captain Nick has to buy uniform pants every couple of months, because he wears out the knees.
I think he just patches
is that
the
the
knees.
only reason why he's on his knees?
Well,
I wear shorts, actually.
There you go.
Well, when you go to St. Lucia all the time.
Yeah, I do. Yeah, exactly.
He flies for a Bermudian company.
But there were a couple of interesting things. You're quite right, Jeff. Using the same runway when they'd had this problem was a surprise. I was just amazed at the not the damage so much, but the dramatic effect of those cowlings open. The engine looks like it's disintegrated. It's like a Lego model that's coming apart, isn't it?
I'm not sure, but this may be one of the first times that cowl separation also included the C duct, the engine reverser doors opening as well, which made it even worse, I think.
Yeah, gives it a really strange appearance, doesn't it?
Yeah,
it almost looks like it's not aligned correctly, but
it does. Yeah, it looks askew, doesn't it?
It's just more of a visual illusion, optical illusion.
And to think about all that drag out there, I'd hate to have thought if that engine on that side had quit. how much more difficult that aircraft would have been.
Yeah,
to
Vegas
control.
is not a nice place to be doing a single engine go around or takeoff and approach. It's high, it's hot, and they'll be reasonably heavy just after takeoff. So, not a nice place. If you're going to have this problem, you want to be somewhere low and cold, not Vegas.
Well, they got lucky with November. Hopefully, it wasn't too hot.
Yeah, but what happens in Vegas stays
In
in Vegas.
Vegas.
That's what you have going for you there.
At least they didn't go to Shenzhen.
Yeah. They don't have the same motto.
Let's divert to Shenzhen.
What happens in
Vegas.
Shenzhen? No, that's not
That doesn't work.
Loses its.
Item D. This is the first time reading of this. Let's see. Liz put this in here for us. Actually, put everything there. An Air Boeing 787-8, also known as the 800 for me. Registration Victor Tango ANE, performing flight 314 from Delhi to Hong Kong. Let's see. They were on an ILS approach to Hong Kong's runway 7 right at about 6:14 in the morning. ATIS had warned of possible glide slope fluctuations when the aircraft descended to 200 feet above ground level, about 2.6 nautical miles short of the runway, until the Enhanced Ground Proximity Warning System, the EGPWS, not easy for me to say, issued a warning. The crew initiated a go-around, positioned for another approach, and landed safely on the second approach to runway 7 right. So what was the weather like, just out of curiosity?
Yeah, they flew at 2.2 and over 10 Ks, so good visibility and no low cloud.
Hello. You know what? I think this particular airplane doesn't have windows, so they couldn't see anything.
That explains.
Yep.
Why
Let's
would
all
you look
stare at the instruments.
So 200 feet above the ground, you're normally about half a mile from half a mile to touchdown, half to a mile, and they were 2.6 nautical miles. If they were looking out the window, they may have thought, looks kind of low.
Well, let's just let the autopilot fly us into the water. That's the other one.
Or the seawall at San Francisco.
Yeah,
no,
that's
I'm
true.
sorry, that was
that was the other thrust.
that was they were manually flying that one.
Well, maybe that point, but it is 0600, so maybe the sun hadn't quite been up, and they were over a dock area, or a terrain that they couldn't really tell how close they were until they got to Jip Whiz. But clearly, they weren't looking at their instruments.
Dana wants to give them the benefit of the doubt.
No, they were looking at their instruments. Unfortunately, they weren't looking at anything but the bad glide slope indication, apparently.
Well,
yeah.
They weren't looking at all their instruments and taking in the big picture, I think. Yeah.
That situational awareness thing that we talk about sometimes.
Call flying an airplane.
Yeah. Well,
it's
luckily,
advisable to do that.
Yeah. Luckily, the ground proximity warning system fired off, and they thought, ooh, that doesn't sound good. We should probably go around. Because, you can always go around. All right. So that was a boo-boo. Here's another one that is new to me. Looks like some kind of a military mid-air collision between an F-18 fighter jet and a KC-130, both Marine Corps air vehicles. And they think they may have been performing some night aerial refueling, and looks like they had some kind of a incident where they collided or something. It doesn't say anything about the 130 in here, so I'm assuming that the KC-130 was okay, but it looks like the F-18 ended up crashing, and they had to eject. And one of the pilots apparently has passed, and the other one is, I think, in fair condition, it says, the update.
I just want to know what it means by competent medical personnel.
As opposed to incompetent personnel.
Exactly. I mean, it's been declared deceased. I mean, and not to make light of, obviously, the terrible circumstance of this person passing away, but it's been declared deceased by competent medical personnel.
Maybe just the translation from the Japanese.
That might be as well. Yeah.
Original Japanese. Yeah.
Nick, aerial refueling at night is dangerous, isn't it?
Oh, it's certainly not a simple task, and not one to be done in a carefree manner, because obviously you're putting yourself very close to an extremely large airplane. There's a lot of wake. If you get yourself out of position, you can get twisted around in the wake behind an aircraft, even though it's only a C-130. There are bigger aircraft that you can refuel behind. The visual cues are very limited, and it's very easy to get severe cases of the leans, which I perhaps ought to explain. It's a form of disorientation where your brain gives you a bit of a false way up, and you're convinced you're in a hard turn or perhaps straight and level when you're not. It's just a information coming from your inner ear, your sense of balance, and it's very hard sometimes to dismiss that. So we were always everyone's always very careful when you're maneuvering around and trying to do air-to-air refueling. Of course, sometimes you end up in cloud, in which case not only you night, you're in cloud, visibility is bad, the lights are all diffused. It's never going to be easy. Luckily, these sorts of incidents are pretty rare. Usually, guys are on their mettle, but you don't know how tired they were or what was going on. We had a case in the Royal Air Force many years ago now where a Buccaneer clipped the tail of a Victor tanker. And very sadly, the Buccaneer crew were fine, but very sadly, shortly afterwards, the tail of the Victor disintegrated and the aircraft went into a high negative G bunt, which took them into the ground or the water. And I don't think any of the crew got out. I think one of the pilots might have, but the negative G was so great that they couldn't actually get to their ejector seat handles, and the rear crew were their only option is a manual bailout on that old airplane, so they wouldn't have stood a chance. So when it happens, it's often tragic, and as is this case, of course, we've lost an F-18 pilot.
I'm getting some information from a competent producer personnel.
Oh yeah,
saying that I misread this, and actually the C-130 is also down and missing.
Oh right,
and 5 crew members aboard that one. So it's even worse than I had first reported.
Okay, I do have a question for Nick, though.
Sure.
What is the procedure? What were your procedures if you ended up either in cloud, either inadvertently or because you couldn't avoid it during refiling? Do you continue?
You just carry on regardless?
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely. If you can't find the bloke visually as you're approaching him because he's in thick cloud, you would have to wait until he came into a clear spell, and then you close up on him. And once you're in close formation on him, and you always join on the left, at least this is the standard procedures that we employed, and they're pretty standard throughout NATO. You join on the left, you come up between the flight deck, you waggle your wings or make a radio call if you're using the radio. And then you're cleared astern one of the hoses in turn. And having moved back and along and behind your hose, you're then cleared to make contact. And from then on, in fact, whenever you're maneuvering around the aircraft, you're never more than 20 or 30 feet away from him. And hopefully these guys will have more than just navigation lights. They'll have the strip lights that are common now, the sort of glowing illumination strips that'll help you line up. But you get astern your station, and you use your formation cues to move up, and quite often the basket doesn't even come visible until you're within about 15 feet of it, because that's only illuminated by little radioactive glims that are around the edge of the basket, and all you see are those sort of emerge out of the blackness. And then it's a matter of closing up, making contact, and pushing up, and you've got to push up about 10 or 15 feet of hose to get the fuel to flow, and then you just maintain your formation position. But all the time you're just hanging about 10 feet below the wing and about 20 feet behind. You're usually level with the back of the aircraft, So your nose is level with his tail, and there's only often 20 feet, 30 feet between you and him. So, it's one of those things that you will learn to do, but it requires an element of skill. And if you're in a lot of turbulence in clouds, say the cloud is QNIM and you're bouncing around in it, sometimes the safest course is to disconnect and back away from him until you can get some better air. But we've all tanked in pretty bad conditions before, and it's very rare to make contact with the tanker.
Interesting. Thank you.
Wow. So here's hoping that they'll find that the KC-130 landed safely somewhere, and they just didn't know about it. But doesn't look great.
No.
And yeah, that's all I can think of saying about that. Finally, in their news folder, this interesting dramatic video from surveillance cameras at or near the executive Fort Lauderdale Executive Airport, I guess. Surveillance video from H&J Electronics International shows the moment of impact when a Cessna crashed into the northern side of a warehouse at Executive Office Park in Fort Lauderdale on Saturday, killing 2 people. And we'll put the link to this in the show notes, and you can see the very last second or so of this airplane. It hits the ground right in front of the building and then just slides and hits the building and explodes into flames. And looks like some kind of a light twin. I can't tell what model a Cessna is, if it's a 402 or...
I couldn't tell from the video. I mean, it's just a really brief clip, but definitely dramatic and definitely sad.
Yes, but nobody on the ground looks like was injured. So
no, there were some people in the building who were all okay.
And you can see that in the video, by the way, people coming out of the building and running away from the big fireball. It's pretty dramatic. So check it out. All right. Anything else before we move on?
I don't think so.
Nope.
Okay, now I'm going to call an audible. Normally, we play the installment of the Old Pilot's Plain Tales after we've covered some of our feedback. But since Captain Nick is going to be leaving us pretty soon so that he can get a good night's rest, I'd like to go ahead and play this week's installment right now. Any objections from anyone?
Nope.
Nope.
All right. Here we go. I can find it. All right, here we go.
The Old Pilot's Plain Tales, Killing Myths. The infamous crash of Air France 447 has been cited many times as an indictment of fly-by-wire technology and automation on the flight deck. Again and again, this accident is used as a stick to beat aircraft manufacturers who employ automation by casting doubt within the minds of passengers and pilots alike. Headlines like "The tragic crash of flight Air France 447 shows the unlikely but catastrophic consequences of automation." "Crash, how computers are setting us up for disaster." "The safety paradox of airplane automation." "Should airplanes be flying themselves?" "A lesson in the hazards of automation." "Intriguingly, the loss of control problem has been attributed to sophisticated cockpit automation." Questions raised about Airbus automated control system. Ill-informed prejudice lingers to this date, and if someone wants to damn new technology or quibble about its use in the cockpit, their go-to quote is, "Remember Air France 447," as if that crash proves their point and encompasses all their concerns about computers and the whole fly-by-wire thing. Such poorly researched opinions are present in the press, supposedly authoritative books, outwardly learned papers, and even with the pilot community itself, with old jokes being trotted out about the new Airbus pilot asking, What's it doing now? As a fairly experienced chap who has flown nothing but fly-by-wire aircraft since 1987, I'm going to dispel some of the myths and untruths that surround this accident and perhaps bring a little understanding. First, a little history lesson on automation and autopilots. The inflatable Otto of the movie Airplane has actually been around since 1914, although he looked a bit different then, probably a bit younger, when Lawrence Sperry fitted a gyroscopic stabilizer apparatus to a Curtiss C-2 biplane designed to improve stability and control. In front of a large crowd, he disentangled himself from the shoulder yoke that controlled the C-2's ailerons and flew past with both his arms held high. The aircraft continued on a straight and steady course, with the pilot obviously not handling the controls. The crowd was on its feet, cheering and shouting, "Remarkable! Extraordinaire! Formidable!" Sperry had stunned the skeptics with his no hands flying. Gyros and accelerometers linked to flight controls removed the tedium and fatiguing need for a pilot to handle the controls on long, straight legs. They became standard fit in all airliners, so that by the 1950s it was almost unheard of for a new machine to roll out of a factory without this facility. They increased in sophistication until in 1966, a British Trident performed the first fully automatic landing of a commercial flight with passengers aboard. So far from being a new thing, the battle of keeping a pilot's handling skills honed through practice has been going on for over half a century. Now let's take a little look at fly-by-wire. The increase in size, weight, and speed of airliners necessitated the introduction of powered flying controls. From this moment on, the pilot wasn't directly in contact with the control surfaces, the elevators, ailerons, and such. His stick merely pulled on steel cables, which in turn moved valves on hydraulic rams that moved the controls and did the heavy lifting for the pilot. What's more, there was no feedback from these controls, and it was possible for a heavy-handed pilot to deflect control so much that it would overstress or even stall the aircraft. As a result, field systems were built into the flight controls that gave an artificial impression that the controls were heavy at high speed and light at low speeds. These were often no more than springs, whose tension was increased by a suitable system of levers and pulleys as airspeed increased. If you've ever tried to lift a drum of steel cable, you will know what prompted the next development. Long runs of steel cables up and down a fuselage are heavy, and getting them round corners complicated. Remembering that all they did was turn hydraulic valves, there had to be an easier way, and it was, of course, by using electric wires. This was already a thing in the 1930s, so don't try and tell me this is a new concept. The Soviets had the first servo-electrically operated aircraft, a Tupolev AN-T-20, and the first purely electronic fly-by-wire aircraft was the Apollo lunar training vehicle, which flew as early as 1968. From then to today, the technology is basically the same. The pilot's control inputs are measured by signal transducers on the control stick, which generate an electrical command. The microphone I am using right now is a simple signal transducer, which converts the mechanical movement of air pressure waves I create as I pontificate into an electrical signal. It's the same in an aircraft. The electrical signal is processed, passed down wires to electrically controlled servo valves on the flight control hydraulic jacks. As this technology became more sophisticated, analog computers replaced the original electric controllers, the first of which was in the Avro Canada CF-105 Arrow, which was under development in the 1950s. Concorde was the first production fly-by-wire airliner, and the first F-16s also used analog control computers, but these soon gave way to the more capable digital control computers we have today. The advantage of a digital control computer is that it can take multiple inputs from a myriad of sources, such as external sensors, pitot and static pressure, temperatures, and such, as well as the pilot's inputs, to give appropriate signals to the flight controls. In a fighter, this allows the pilot to fly an aircraft that is inherently unstable to achieve undreamed of control authority and carefree handling, because stalls, spins, and exceeding aircraft limits such as G-forces can be prevented. In a mundane airliner, such exotic exploits tend to upset the passengers, and in an airframe that is inherently stable and pedestrian, the level of control modification needed is minimal. The first fully digital fly-by-wire airliner was, of course, the Airbus A320, which rolled out in 1987. However, just like a sophisticated fighter aircraft, the A320's control systems protect the aircraft from exceeding certain limits. The envelope protection prevents the aircraft from pitching up or down excessively or rolling upside down. It limits the minimum and maximum speed and, probably most importantly, allows the pilot to get the maximum performance from his wing without the danger of stalling. So, on to the first big question. Was this control system the cause of the crash of Air France 447? Unequivocally, no. Now, the second big question. Why didn't the very clever flight control system prevent the crash of Flight 447? Answering this question forms the second part of this tale. There have been entire books devoted to this accident, but I'm going to deal with it using a single sheet of paper, so forgive me if I keep to the point. Air France 447 was an Airbus A330-200 series, the very aircraft type that I was flying on my last two sectors, en route from Rio de Janeiro to Paris, and cruising over the Atlantic about halfway between the east coast of Brazil and the west coast of Africa. They were flying through an area of weather known as the Intertropical Convergence Zone, where large cumulonimbus clouds often grow to high levels. Being a long night flight, the normal crew of 2 pilots was augmented by an additional first officer. The aircraft was cruising at flight level 350 Mach decimal 82, as they were still too heavy to climb safely to the next level, flight level 370. When it was the captain's turn to rest, he listened to the first officers brief each other and then went to the crew rest area, leaving them to fly the aircraft. The more junior of the first officers was the pilot flying the aircraft, and his colleague was monitoring. Navigating through a cluster of convective clouds, it's probable that the crew entered heavy cloud made of ice crystals, which entered the pitot tubes, exceeding the probe's heater's ability to melt the ice and evacuate the resulting water. This blockage would have caused erroneous and conflicting airspeed indications and caused the autopilot and auto thrust to disengage, and the flight control computers to degrade from normal law to an alternate law with fewer protections. Incorrect speeds were shown on the left instruments for 29 seconds, the standby instruments for 54 seconds, and the right instruments for 61 seconds at most. Throughout this, and for the rest of the flight, the only input to the flight controls came from the pilot's side sticks. When the autopilot disconnected, the right seat pilot, who was the nominated pilot flying, called, "I have the controls." In the light turbulence they were experiencing, The aircraft rolled to the left by less than 10 degrees and descended by around 300 feet. In alternate law 2, the roll controls are in direct law, in that the ailerons deflect in direct response to the control inputs, just like a Cessna 150 might. The inputs that were applied to the aircraft were rapid and heavy-handed, officially described as excessive and incompatible with the recommended handling practices for high-altitude flight. The aircraft oscillated in roll due to over-controlling, and the hard pull-up increased the angle of attack sufficient to bring on the oral stall warning. Only 4 seconds had elapsed since the autopilot disconnected. By 10 seconds, both pilots had realized that they had a discrepancy in speed. Indeed, the pilot monitoring stated, "We've lost the speeds," which should have prompted them to apply the unreliable speed memory items. Had they done so, they would soon have recovered the situation. However, neither pilot mentioned these vital actions, which required them to set a pitch attitude and a power setting suitable for level flight at their height. Having identified the airspeed problem, the pilot monitoring then began working through the ECAM warnings. He called out the loss of autopilot, auto thrust, and the change to alternate flight law, as well as the thrust lock warning that was continually reminding the handling pilot that he now needed to set engine power manually. At this point, the monitoring pilot noticed the excessive pitch, which had exceeded 10 degrees nose up, a completely inappropriate attitude for their height. Indeed, at one point, they reached 7,000 feet per minute of climb, and he tried to coach the other pilot into reducing the pitch. After making a few selections in an attempt to regain accurate speed indications for his colleague, the monitoring pilot seemed to become overwhelmed and concentrated entirely on recalling the captain to the flight deck. Despite knowing that the aircraft was unable to fly at flight level 370 due to their weight, the aircraft was still climbing, and of course its speed was reducing. 30 seconds after the start of the event, the left side instruments returned to normal and read 223 knots. 30 seconds later, the right side speed also read correctly. However, for a reason that defies logic, the handling pilot continued to apply backstick and climb the aircraft until it reached 38,000 feet, with the engines now in full thrust toga setting. The self-trimming stabilizer had moved slowly from 3 degrees nose up to 13 degrees nose up, and the angle of attack reached 16 degrees. Despite the nose-high attitude, the aircraft could no longer climb. It was now going back down with an increasing angle of attack, which built until the wings stalled. With the stall warning blaring, the left seat first officer took over control and pushed his control stick forward to lower the nose and recover from the stall, but he did so without pressing the override push button that would disengage the other stick. Because the right seat pilot was still pulling his control stick hard back, the inputs cancelled each other out and the attempt failed. Aircraft speed now fell below a level where the angle of attack vanes are considered valid, and as a consequence, the stall warning stopped. When the handling pilot did relax his nose-up input and the speed started to increase, the angle of attack indications again became valid and the stall warning restarted. Instead of applying a stall recovery, this prompted the pilot to pull back again. By now, the captain was on the flight deck, but instead of taking his seat, he remained on the jump seat. The more senior first officer, who was in the left seat, said, "We've lost all control of the airplane. We don't understand anything. We've tried everything." And then, "Climb, climb, climb, climb." When the handling pilot replied, "But I've been at maximum nose up for a while," the captain realized that he was causing the stall, and he shouted, "No, no, no, don't climb." By now it was too late to break the stall, and with a rate of descent exceeding 10,000 feet a minute, the handling pilot swore and said, "We're going to crash. This can't be true, but what is happening?" When Flight 447 hit the water, all 228 souls on board were killed instantly. When examining this accident, it's easy to get sidetracked by things that might have saved the situation. Had modified pitot tubes been fitted, they might not have iced up. Had the aircraft not gone into alternate law, the protections would have saved the situation. Had the aircraft been fitted with central control columns and not side sticks, the mishandling errors might have been easier to notice, but none of these things caused the accident. The accident was caused by the failure of the handling pilot to manually control his aircraft when the autopilot disengaged. Despite correctly diagnosing a failure in speed indications, both pilots failed to apply the memory items for that situation, something that they were required to know. When one pilot grossly mishandled the aircraft, the other didn't take control in the correct manner by stating, "I have control," and if necessary, pressing the takeover button. When the aircraft warned that they were entering a stall, the pilot didn't apply the most basic of recovery actions that every pilot is taught from almost their first lesson onwards. In fact, he did exactly the opposite and pulled the stick further back. Despite coming onto the flight deck when the aircraft was still at altitude around 30,000 feet, the captain, and by far the most experienced pilot, did not get into his seat and take control. Automation didn't cause this accident, and neither did fly-by-wire, computers, or any other fancy gadget. It was purely a lack of piloting skills, an understanding of high-level handling techniques, a knowledge of emergency procedures, and the most basic stall recovery drill. If you enjoy Plaintail,
Yeah.
yabba dabba dabba.
Yada, yada, yada.
Yada, yada,
That's the
yada.
one. I was being Fred Flintstone, sorry.
That was my best friend's reference there.
Excellent
I think that
plaintail.
was very well done.
Excellent plaintail, and many good points. I don't know where I was going with that. Many good points made regarding automation and the error that so many people make when they refer to Air France 447 as proof that automation is evil. It's not. Pilot incompetence is.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I hope got that across. I was a bit firmer, perhaps, than I might have been, but I was there. Did that one to make a point.
I think you did.
Yeah,
Point well made.
I think you did as well.
Yeah. So, any comments?
I disagree with pretty much everything that you mentioned. I actually agree with you, and we discussed this a little bit before we started recording today, and it's so. I mean, there are so many variables and factors involved in this whole thing, but many of the things that people point to in this particular incident as causal really weren't causal. They were maybe a factor in the whole thing, or contributing factor. But the as Nick made a very good point about this is that the pilot at the controls somehow inexplicably didn't understand what the situation was and didn't know how to activate the controls properly, and something that I learned from listening to this was I didn't realize that there was an unreliable airspeed memory item, an action item that we were supposed to have committed to memory in place at that time that apparently they didn't bother executing, because if they had, they would have all been alive still today.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly
I mean, to me, it just boils down to the pilot flying, being so disoriented about the situation and doing completely the wrong thing, and no one else realizing what was going on in the moment either. So everyone was distracted, disoriented in some way or another, and no one was flying the airplane, basically.
And then a lot of people like to make this a I don't know, a justification of a certain type of control system, like a conventional control system versus a side stick controller. And again, that may have been a contributing factor in some of this. Maybe if they had a more conventional control style, perhaps they wouldn't have gotten into the situation. There's no guarantee that would have occurred. And the other thing, and the point that I made with Nick before we started recording today, is that there were several documented instances of this same kind of thing occurring in that type of control system, airplane, Airbuses, and the crews knew how to handle the situation, how to set the appropriate pitch attitude and the power setting, and in fact, they never even got into an upset situation, and several instances of it occurring after this tragedy. So in this one case where you have a pilot that, as I said, inexplicably didn't perform the proper actions when this occurred, and subsequently lost control of the situation, and then the other two pilots not seeming to grasp what the situation was until it was too late.
Right.
Yeah.
It was just a tragic combination of all of the wrong people there at the wrong time, basically.
Right,
Any
I
other
think so.
combination of people
Yeah.
might have done something differently.
Micah makes the point that I think I covered sort of in that if it had had a yoke, a central yoke, wouldn't that have saved the situation? Well, Micah, in 1996, Bergen Air Flight 301 crashed, killing 189. The captain flew an incorrect and high indicated airspeed because they had a very similar problem. He thought he had high airspeed. He flew the aircraft too slow. They stalled and crashed. And that was a Boeing 757 with a center stick and a yoke. And in the same year, Aero Peru 603, also a Boeing 757, killed 70 in another similar accident where they lost their pressure instruments, and they crashed as well. So I'm sorry, having a center stick and a yoke is not a guarantee that you will notice what's going on or that you will save the situation, because there's two previous accidents that prove exactly my point. It doesn't really matter when the guys who are flying the airplane are so confused as they really don't understand what's going on. That's not a cue that even those blokes look at the stick position. Even they didn't work out what it was. And quite often it's where the stabilator, a much more powerful control system, the main tailplane, which is what we use to trim the airplane, it's the position of that is often the thing that drives the airplane into the stall, not the actual position of the elevators, which are controlled by the yoke. So you could have the elevators as that 737 that had crashed just recently, we talked about the last show. They had the elevators full back, but because the new Boeing 737-9, was it, or dash 8?
The dash 8 Max.
Yeah, because the
Max 8.
anti-stall system had fed in trim, driving the tailplane into a nose down position. It doesn't matter where they had the stick, they couldn't recover the aircraft.
Right.
And again, that's another situation where they didn't understand the situation. They didn't understand that they had a runaway stabilizer, or maybe not a runaway. It was actually being activated by this MCAS. But regardless, if they think that the stabilizer is doing something it shouldn't be doing, then if they had properly executed the runaway stabilizer action items, then they probably could have saved that one as well.
Yeah.
So it all comes down to understanding what's going on in the moment that it's happening, being able to take quick and appropriate action. And people can make those mistakes. I think automation can make not necessarily mistakes, but if it can't cope with something it's not programmed for, you're going to see similar issues happen. If you're trying to say make the case for automation or just for, pilots flying the aircraft.
Yeah, reality is, that having complete automation on one end of the spectrum or complete manual flight on the other end of the spectrum, especially in this world of flying passengers around on especially long flights, both of those are not acceptable. It's something in between. It's that interaction, that machine-human interface that we have to live in and operate in and understand what's happening constantly. So, automation is essential. It's here. This is reality. And it's important to have. It's a tool that we have. It's just that we have to understand everything we can about the automation and what it's doing. And by the way, Nick mentioned something about, well, what's it doing now? Well, the Airbus is not the only airplane where you'll hear that said. I've heard it many, many times. And
any aircraft with an autopilot, I think.
Yes, that's true. It's like, okay, why is it doing that? What are we doing? And usually the answer is, oh, because I did this, and that's why it's doing.
Yeah, I didn't program it correctly. I didn't program it to do what I thought I was telling it to do. Yeah. Why is it?
Right.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what I was going to say, Jeff. It's basically the human interaction. And, there is no such thing as perfect technology. There's no such thing as a perfect human. But if the human doesn't understand what technology is doing, then really it's the human's fault. And, even if this last accident that just occurred with the EMAS, not the EMAS, the
MCAS.
MCAS. I want to say EMAS.
Because you probably were looking at the Southwest aircraft that went off the runway.
Yeah, I was thinking about that actually.
EMAS.
To be covered in a future podcast.
Yeah, future. But so, anyways, the MCAS. I mean, listen, the system's there, the controls are there. Whether it's up for debate whether Boeing made it known. And again, that is still a human. Whether Boeing did or did not, make it known, it's still a human interaction because somebody somewhere along the line that's a human being made that decision not to or did include the training or did not include the training. And if that was the case, then it was still a human issue. So, the systems are designed by humans, by people that are imperfect, and they're designed to protect us, as we were talking about just at the beginning of this podcast with the LL issue. And when it works great. And the human interaction is where the real issue is. So we all strive to be as perfect as we possibly can, but there's always going to be that time. And of course, with the Air France issues, as Nick so eloquently put into words, it basically came down to the pilot's ability. And I mean, one could almost say that the technology is playing into the fact that we have become less of a pilot, more of a manager of the systems, and we're forgetting some of our skills, and we've talked about that in nauseum over the past years. So,
and one of those contributory factors in this Air France 447 was the fact that the first officer that was at the controls at the time, the least experienced one,
right,
was supposedly a slave to following the flight director bars. And we all know that usually it's good information. On some airplanes, it's better information than others. And the Airbus, I understand, it's a very accurate indication of where you should probably be putting the attitude of the aircraft. However, you also have to understand what the situation is and whether or not it's commanding something that isn't inappropriate. And I don't know, Dana, if you feel the same way, but I fly occasionally with people, and usually it's the ones that don't fly the airplane very smoothly that slavishly follow the flight director bars, whether it be the pitch or the lateral, but mostly the pitch. And they're the ones that can't fly the airplane smoothly because they're like, as soon as the bar moves up a little bit, they're going, I gotta be exactly where that bar is telling me to be. And I think I also talked about the story where I was climbing out of Miami, I believe, and they told us to fly. We were heading west. They said to fly north, and I kind of waited 2, 3, 4 seconds before I actually moved the heading select knob to see if this guy was actually going to turn the airplane to the north. And no, he did not turn the airplane until I spun the heading select knob and the flight director bar moved to the right. I'm thinking, God, you got to get out of that, tunnel vision that you have on that flight director system. You got to see everything. You got to take, look at the big picture here.
Well, and I'm sorry, go ahead. I'm sorry. I thought you were
saying perhaps that was another factor in this whole thing where when the flight director, there were times when the flight director system was out of view, and then other times where it came back into view and it was commanding something like a very high pitch attitude, which was inappropriate for an airplane in the stall. But he seemed to disregard the fact that that's not the right thing to do, and just slavishly tried to follow the flight director system. And
you're right, Jeff. Flying an airplane is not a computer game.
No,
you don't just look at a TV screen and track a ball. And the other cues that they missed, that you think to yourself, how did they not realize that it had gone quiet because they had such low airspeed that they were there. And the buffet, the aircraft entering the stall is not the same as Mach buffet when you're going too fast. All these cues are there. The fact the controls are having little effect over the airplane because the airspeed is so low. All these factors, which we learn from basic flying lesson number, 5 or whatever it is, where you learn low speed handling and stalling, and we should know them so they're instinctive. How they managed to forget that, I don't know. They weren't inexperienced pilots. The first officer flying had over 3,000 hours. I think the other guy had about 8,000 hours. The skipper, I don't know, 15, 20,000 hours.
I guess I'm looking at it, or relatively speaking, I guess.
Yeah, but we all know that you can build up a lot of hours doing one of these jobs, and you don't actually do any flying, not any meaningful flying.
Right.
In Nick, since you did such a great job on this, it really kind of made me realize, even in my own experience as I came up, on the aircraft that Jeff and I fly, we fly it quite a bit. You say this, the first officer is flying at 3,000 hours. Well, how much of that is truly flying, especially recency, in the last 1,000, 2,000 hours, maybe he hadn't been, maybe he's doing long haul and has only gotten one landing a month for the last 24, 36 months. I don't know that answer. We could probably find that out, but that's irrelevant. Just mentioning it because when I was coming up, and I'm going to make this personal, because you mentioned it, Jeff, as well, is, people that become slaves to that flight director. When I first was on, learning to fly the Mad Dog in the right seat, I was very much a slave to that flight director because it was telling me the information I needed, but I was also applying it in a way that you're talking about, is thinking outside of the box. Because, one of the things that a lot of the airlines have gone to, and we can talk about all these different instances, but I'm not going to, is that they've really tried to focus pilots in on becoming slave to the autopilot, the flight director, the automation. And when I was coming up as a new MD-80 pilot, I was you've heard me say this before. I've always been taught, the first thing I was taught is smoothness counts. And it took me a long time, even with me flying the airplane all the time in the right seat, for me not to fly the flight director, or close to being on the flight director as I possibly could, until I got it to the point like you are today, Jeff, and like I am in that is I fly through the flight director because I can anticipate, because I have a lot of experience with the airplane. I know that the turn's coming, in the departure in Atlanta. I know that we're going to be leveling off, okay, but I don't want the airplane coming up to the level off altitude at the 2,000 feet per minute climb. I'll bring it down 1,000 feet per minute. It's much smoother, right? So I fly through that just like you do. But my initial experience as a pilot that didn't have a lot of experience until I became comfortable with the aircraft. I flew the flight director, and some people just may not be able to get away from that. And maybe in coming back to my original point, okay, he had 3,000 hours, 4,000 hours, but maybe his comfort level never got to that level because he just on the international side wasn't flying frequent enough, and so thus he was never that comfortable flying the airplane. I'm just playing devil's advocate, and I found myself as I upgraded to the left seat just recently kind of going back to that. Okay, I've got to fly the flight director, but that ended real quickly because I remembered I know how to fly this airplane. It's no different. I just moved 36 inches. It's the same thing. It's just flying with a different hand. So, it is all relevant because we as human beings, we have our comfort level. We find what that comfort level is. And until we break through that comfort level and become even more comfortable with something, it does take experience. And unfortunately, he was the wrong guy flying at the wrong time. And that's kind of where we're at. I mean, again, we're slaves to the automation, and we need to break that. And some people are just better at doing it than others.
Well said.
Hear, hear. Okay. Well, I'm glad that we were able to play that Plain Tale while you were here, Nick.
Yeah, thanks for that, Jeff.
Add your commentary and help us understand it a little bit better. And I understand now that your bed calls.
It does, I'm afraid. I've barely got 8 hours I'll have to be out of the house. So I wish you all well, and I'll be in St. Lucia tomorrow, typing away, doing my next Plain Tale. I'm still wondering what to do it on, but I've got plenty of suggestions.
Inspiration will come.
Yeah, I might do it on the red-winged booby. How's that?
Is that like the blue-footed booby?
It might be, yes. I think solutions are
Enjoy your tropical drink.
Yes.
Oh, thank you. And by the way, someone did actually, I think it was Colonel Jeff, tell me that the noise on my little bit I did for the Patreons are little tree frogs, apparently.
Oh, yeah.
A little bell-like noise. Isn't that amazing? Anyway, so I'll go hunting tree frogs. That'll be fun. All right, guys. Have a great rest of the show. Enjoy the feedback.
Fly safe. Enjoy it.
Cheers.
Enjoy that warm weather.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.
Okay. With that, now we can talk about Captain Nick. No.
Excellent.
Perfect.
All right.
Something tells me he's still here.
Because you say the same thing when I disappear.
I know. But then you always listen to it, and I always get in trouble. So I should know better. Okay. With that, I think it's now time for your feedback. And why is this not playing? Oh, I know why. I changed something in my settings. This will work a lot better.
Captain, incoming message.
Let's start with item number 1, Rob. Speaking of Rob, that's his name, but apparently this company tried to rob... well, here, let me read this. Flying can already be pricey for passengers. This from people.com/travel. Flying can already be pricey for passengers, and on one flight, the bill kept climbing when the airline asked flyers to pay for their plane's repairs. In Beijing, an LOT Polish Airlines plane needed a new pump to fly to Warsaw, and the flight turned to the 249 people on the plane to help finance it, according to Metro. I guess that must be some newspaper. The effort reportedly raked in about $350 in American money, and the flight had a 10-hour delay. LOT Polish Airlines did not immediately reply to this media outlet's request for comment. Quote, this is from Daniel Golobiowski, who was a passenger on the flight. We are at the international airport. I cannot believe that transactions take place here in cash under the table with the mechanic standing next to the plane. Incredible, he added. And so apparently they were in a situation where they weren't going to give them the part that they needed to fix the airplane until they received a little bit of under-the-table moolah.
Yeah, I think that had something to do with... I'm not sure if this was the same incident, or I read something about it in a different publication, not People Magazine or people.com. But the mechanics at the airport couldn't take credit cards for some reason. So they had to come up with the cash for it, and it's not a base for this airline, and no one had cash. So they had to, I think that's why the fundraising had to take place. But
and maybe they've been burned in the past.
Still doesn't make for very good public relations.
Yeah, I guess the same passenger said, hey, the representative of LOT, Polish Airlines, should have both cash and credit card with them to handle these situations. But they don't give me any cash to deal with situations like this. But luckily, I don't fly to places in the world where you need to deal with people in cash.
Yeah, they just couldn't process the credit card, I guess.
Yeah. Wow. Very interesting.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe it wasn't all an evil ploy to get extra money, and maybe it was just...
I don't know, but I would imagine that the airline would reimburse, compensate, and especially for the significant.
Yeah, and I've heard of that where some of these not so major airlines going to not so delightful locations. They have to carry around a currency in order to, in case they'll carry their own mechanics a lot of times into these places.
Got to grease the skids or whatever they say.
Yeah, kind of grease the local skids, and I don't know how they protect it because you go into some places. I don't know if they have local armed guards or what. Maybe you have to grease the local armed guards too. But I've heard of something similar. I think it's catching everybody off guard because it's LOT is a pretty well-known airline throughout the world, but maybe they have been having some financial issues, and maybe their credit cards are not working, or maybe the credit card machine was down. There's a lot of different variables here. So
yeah. Speaking of flying to places around the world where things aren't as secure as they could be, I've heard of a couple different places that Acme flies where. Let's say, for instance, in a certain northern portion of the African continent where we lay over, I believe it's is it Nigeria, where the crew has to be like in a vehicle with armed guards, and maybe another vehicle following them because there's a chance that the vehicle can be attacked on the way en route from the airport to the hotel and vice versa. And they tell our crews that we're not telling you have to stay on this compound, this protected, secure area. We recommend that you do because, you're taking your life into your own hands.
Recommend.
Yeah, strongly recommend.
And basically, we won't be responsible if you do something we don't recommend, probably.
And that doesn't sound very pleasant to me.
No.
And we've had even in Mexico City, even, I don't know if it's still true now, but in years past, I've heard of airline crews, being attacked by people trying to kidnap or whatever and make some money. It's just it's a scary world out there in certain places.
Yeah, be on your guard. Especially if you're traveling to some place that is not the safest, and follow recommendations that are provided because they're probably in your best interest.
Right. And even Louisville, not Louisville, Baltimore. We used to stay at a hotel. It's a pretty nice hotel. It was just north of Camden Yards. Yeah, a nice easy walk to Camden Yards, and just a couple of blocks north of that particular hotel. The neighborhood kind of gets a little, I don't know.
The character changes?
The character changes. Yeah. And, just common sense would tell you that, if you're going to walk around that area, you should probably not be by yourself, especially at night. And apparently one of our pilot crew members was on his own in the dark and walking in this area and was mugged and injured and, robbed. And I was impressed that Acme's corporate security got into it immediately, and within about a week, we had already changed our location for our hotel, which is kind of a shame because I feel bad for the hotel because where the hotel actually is not that bad.
It's just in close enough proximity to...
Yeah, and the guy made a bad decision, and because of that, we pulled out of that hotel, and we're in a couple other nice hotels as well, closer to the inner harbor. But still, you got to use your head. You have to take common sense precautions when you're traveling in places around the world, and that stuff. You go to a lot of places around the world, and you just can't.
Sure.
Go out there in your running outfit and in a bad area without
or even just an unknown area. So last weekend's another great example. It's in downtown St. Petersburg, and I want to go for a run in the morning, but I just wasn't familiar with the area, and I kind of knew where I wanted to go, but I didn't know what the neighborhood looked like. So I just made sure I waited until the sun came up, and then made sure that I was comfortable with where I was seeing that I was heading.
The thing you have going for you, Steph, is that you can run fast.
Well, I do sometimes bank on that just a little bit, but it's easy to kind of have a false sense of security sometimes, especially if you've been to if you've never had problems before, or if you're, I will say I'm probably a little bit more guilty of it, where you start running and I like to listen to music, and I usually don't have it turned up very loud, but it's easy to get lost in your own thoughts a little bit. And before you know it, you're not aware of your surroundings as much as you were before, especially if you're, where I was running was on a trail. So it wasn't on a road or crossing intersections or anything. So there's no real reason to be on the lookout for traffic or, other hazards. But I think those are the places where you really need to be a little bit more on guard, because you don't know what's around the corner. You don't know who's on the other side of the fence,
Right.
So just always be aware of your surroundings and, take whatever precautions you need to. And if that includes don't go out to that location, don't go there.
Yeah, and what I was going to say is also, Jeff, you mentioned, Mexico City at one point, but South America, there's a couple places down there that I know that we've had armed guards and have to be concerned. But there are places all over the world, even in our own country, that you have to be cautious, and that's just caution to the wind. No matter who you are, where you are, and who you're with. I mean, it's always better to have safety in numbers. Going out by yourself is always a danger. It doesn't matter how good shape you are, how big you are. I mean, I tend to have less problems in a lot of places just because of my sheer size. I'm a big guy, and a lot of people just don't want to mess with big guy. They don't want to mess with that, but if they come with me, at me with a knife or a gun, I don't care how big I am. I'm still a human.
Well, there's always someone bigger, stronger.
Exactly.
Faster.
So
doesn't matter who you are, what your skill set is.
Good, correct. So, it's it's caution to the wind, no matter where you are, and whether you're on overnight or whether you're at home, going to the grocery store. It can happen anytime, anywhere. You just have to be cautious, no matter what.
Right. So Dana, somebody is telling me that you may have to go ahead and leave.
Yeah, actually, one of the things I was waiting for to head down to Florida for the weekend was Julie. I was going to say my wife, but Julie, everybody knows her name, has been released from work. So we're going to wait until about 6:30 to go after the traffic, or most of the traffic. I got about a 6.5 hour drive ahead of me. And her boss has told her that she can leave. And part of the reason why I was a couple minutes late was because Julie brought her car home, and I ran her back to work, because that way we could leave when she got released from work. Well, she's been released. So I'm going to try to beat traffic out, if you don't mind.
Don't mind at all.
Not at all.
So we can get ahead of it a little bit and get on the road and
well, as you said to Nick, enjoy the warm weather in Florida.
And you know what I'm going to do while I'm thinking of that is I'm going to hop in my car. I'm going to take my headset. I may not be able to join you via video, but honestly, if the audio doesn't go too bad on you, and I'll pop in via the chat, via my phone, via my Bose headset, and probably can continue on for the next hour or two for sure.
Well, hopefully we're not going to be going for another 2. I think another.
But if
running on 2.
Yeah. So give me about 5 minutes. I'm going to disconnect everything here, and I'll try to do it that way, because it's worked before. And as long as the background noise is not bad, I think I can still contribute to the show.
All right. Well, we'll give it a shot. And remember, mute is your friend.
It is. I will. And I'm not going to have the video on either. So,
okay.
All right. Thanks.
All right. See you.
See you in a bit. Bye.
Okay. Item number 2. This is sent in from our producer, Liz. A Turkish Airlines pilot found out that his school teacher was flying, and he went on to gift him an unforgettable flight. It's not every day that you get to see scenes like this on a flight, but what happened on this Turkish Airlines flight left everyone on the plane in tears of happiness and gratitude. Anyway, it goes on to say that a journalist, Isham Ul Haq, took to Twitter to share the moving video of what a Turkish Airlines pilot did when he found out he was flying with on the aircraft with his teacher on board. And it's a very cool video. A lot of production value for something that just happened right off the...
Yeah, off the cuff.
Yeah.
Supposedly off the cuff.
Yeah, supposedly, because of camera angles and everything else. But it's still a cool story.
Yeah.
So
we like feel-good stories. We don't have enough of them, I think, sometimes.
No, you're right. And the videos we usually see, Steph, are the ones with airplanes crashing.
Well, you've already featured a few of those today.
So here's one that's not an airplane crashing.
Not an airplane crash, and it'll get you right in the feels.
Yeah.
Warm, fuzzy feeling for the holidays. There you go.
It will. Thank you, Liz, she knows that you got to have the right mix. So we do appreciate that.
Top-notch producer.
Yes. She's the best producer we've ever had.
This is true.
Now we're going to switch to something that's a little bit...
What were we saying about a mix?
Yeah. Well, here's a mix for you. And of course, Texas Charlie.
We had one of these stories before too, and I don't know why these things keep popping back up. Sorry, that was not a pun.
Oh yeah. Well,
pun intended.
Texas Charlie uses them as well. Here, let me read to you what Texas Charlie wrote to us. Howdy, y'all. Don't know if this will make it into the podcast, but here goes. The attached article is about phallic graffiti found in and around Air Force, but in and on a B-52, and specifically in the cockpit. Pun definitely intended. Eventually, it led to the lieutenant colonel losing his command because he could not control the eruption of inappropriate doodles. It's a hard position for the Air Force to take, but a rigid regulation requires stiff discipline. Mm-hmm. Wow. I think that deserves several rim shots, I guess. Being that boys and girls will be boys, I would guess that more than a few flight decks that the APG crew have visited have had their share of penile portraits. Wow, there's some alliteration there. Mm-hmm. Or other adolescent...
Rolls right off the tongue too, doesn't it?
No.
No.
Any stories you would like to share? Adios all and happy cloud surfing. Merry Christmas, Texas Charlie. And the link to the article, the headline is Stop Drawing Dicks, a CO told his airmen. They didn't. Then he was fired. Anyway, this happened in Qatar in August 2017. Lieutenant Colonel Paul Goosen wrote a simple message on a whiteboard for all his airmen to see. Stop drawing those things. Goosen went on to write that phallic images were showing up everywhere on base, including in restrooms, dorms, and vehicles. A command investigation noted that the phallic images were also drawn on bombs loaded onto B-52s and in the soot on the bombers' exteriors. To the layman, Goosen's instructions might seem pretty straightforward, but the airmen of the 69th Expeditionary Bomber Squadron took away...
Is that really the squadron they were a part of? I see it there. I'm not doubting what it just anyway, coincidence, I suppose.
I think it's just a coincidence. Took away a different message. Since Goosen didn't specifically say that drawing male phallic images while inside the bombers was wrong, then it must be okay, the command investigation found. Anyway, so he kind of, tried to stem the this issue or eliminate it, and apparently they say that his what he was saying wasn't taken seriously or serious. Well, yeah. What else to say here?
A little tongue in cheek.
Yeah, maybe they thought, like wink,
okay,
wink.
Yeah, gotcha.
Don't do that.
Draw any on the outside. You didn't say anything about Inside.
So apparently, maybe lack of saying the right things was license for them to continue this. And
No, I think they were just being. There's a word for it, and it's referenced in this article, but I'm not going to say it on air.
okay, yeah,
Use your imagination.
Yeah. So
Any.
he lost his command. He paid for not being stern enough with stiff and rigid regulations. Could do this all day.
Yeah. Well, I'm just a little sad that it came back to him because.
Yeah.
I mean,
I can imagine. You think the people in the unit are kind of feeling bad, like,
you would hope.
Unless this guy was himself a Richard. Yeah, I don't know. As far as
Texas Charlie did ask for stories to share.
Yeah. So I'll say.
I have one, but go ahead.
Okay. Well, let's hear yours.
So this actually was not aviation related at all, but definitely workplace related. I shall refrain from naming the workplace because this place still exists, even though I've not worked there for many, many, many years. But let's just say that the average age of the staff was about 17 or 18. So as Texas Charlie said, boys and girls will be boys. And in the break room, essentially, there was a place where you could basically lie down underneath, and there was a cabinet kind of overhead. And let's just say that was a popular place for artistic endeavors. And
a gallery of sorts?
A gallery, yeah. Well, the same, it was a theme always, and very similar theme to the one mentioned in this article, phallic drawings and the like. And occasionally they would be discovered, and then they would be painted over, only to be replaced with more detailed and more perhaps obscene cartoons depicting all kinds of things. And it just went on and on and on. And there you have it. But it was always interesting to see what would be, once it was discovered, what it would be replaced with.
Right. So was there any end to it?
No. I'm sure if I went back to this place today, there would probably still be some form of phallic drawing.
Yeah. In
the same location.
So long time ago, I've been doing this for the airlines for, coming up in 10 days will be my 30th anniversary at Acme. When I first started flying back in the old 727s, there were several places for people to stash inappropriate photos, shall I say?
Ooh, photos.
And from magazines.
Sure.
And it wasn't long after I was hired that management said, "Hey, look, let's be professionals here. Let's quit, playing around with this stuff, and this could potentially be." Something that could be a liability for us if, the public found out what was going on in our cockpits, with this stuff. And it was an effort was made, pretty quickly after I was hired to stem that. And it wasn't long thereafter where you didn't see any of that stuff, which is appropriate. You should not have, you think, and then, sometimes in our bathrooms, I never have understood somebody taking out their pen or something to scratch something with, the graffiti thing.
Oh, like in the stall?
Yeah. And even to this day, I think to myself, for goodness sakes, we are professional pilots.
Well, and you're spending that much time in there, really. You need to see a doctor if you have to spend that long in a stall in a public bathroom.
Yeah, most of these things aren't artistry. They're more, like things being said, against certain people in the company and that kind of thing. And it's just like, come on, really grow up. Let's not be juveniles. Let's be adults and professionals as we are, and act like it.
Yeah, I will say, and this is well known amongst skydivers, but if you ever do get into skydiving and you have your logbook of how many jumps you've made, do not leave that out and about. Make sure that is in a secure place at all times. Otherwise, you will find it filled with cartoons.
Ah, okay.
Yeah.
Well, in that case, that's somebody's personal thing,
Yeah.
But when you're leaving it in our office,
a public place
potentially,
and
it's not good.
Not at a place of business.
No,
where you're an employee.
Right.
Not a good thing.
Right. And when your employer tells you that this is inappropriate, then you should follow those.
Stop.
Yeah.
And especially in the military. Good grief.
Yeah. And see, at the time, when I was hired by Acme, 90%, I would say, of us came from the military. We were officers. You'd think that, you'd have a certain level of, professionalism and class, but not always the case.
Yeah. No.
I'm a point. No, never mind. Moving on. Item 4. The hard landing in, where was this?
Bumantat.
Oh, thank you. Oh, yes, he did. Say it again.
Bumantat.
This is from Alejandro.
Alejandro.
Why don't you read it?
Sure. Hi, APG crew. This is Alejandro again from Vietnam. For sure, you guys will comment about the Vietjet landing in Bumantat. Inside information said that it was a bounce landing followed by a 3.9 G nose gear landing. Ouch. I would like to add some factors about this runway. Here where I work, Acme Blue, this is a captain's landing airport because the runway has a slope of almost about 2 degrees, A320 family limitation. So when you are waiting in the holding point, you can only see until half of the runway. So only see about half of the runway at a time.
Slope's pretty good.
From the approach. Yeah, good slope or incline.
Mm-hmm.
What I mean is that during the takeoff roll, you will be going up, and when you pass the halfway of the runway, you will be going down again. So it's sloped on either side. It kind of comes to a point, I think is what he's trying to describe. At nights, the runway is super dark and without center lights and is away from the city, so we, the pilots, can experience an empty field myopia. Rumors said that the airframe got a substantial damage, giving a total loss for a brand new A321neo received just 2 weeks ago from the factory.
Wow.
Attached, you guys can see some pictures and also the video of the evacuation recorded by a passenger. Wishing you the best, Alejandro, former Boeing 737 first officer and Airbus captain. P.S. If it's not Boeing, I'm not going. Sorry, Nick. LOL.
Oh, he's not here.
That's okay. Even more reason to read it. And
yeah.
Oh, this is another aircraft that lost its nose gear.
Yeah, very similar to the one in Macau.
Mm-hmm.
And that last picture there of the wrinkled skin is definitely telltale evidence that they're not going to be able to use this airplane again, which is such a shame. Only 2 weeks old.
Right.
Thank you, Alejandro. Alejandro.
Close enough.
Okay, thanks. 5, Glenn Towler. You ever heard of this guy?
I have. Time or two.
All right. I have not done any thing with this audio. I have not even listened to it yet. So I'm not sure, how this is going to sound. We'll give it a whirl. Here we go.
Hello, Captain Jeff, Captain Nick, Captain Dana, and Dr. Steph. It's Glenn here from New Zealand with some feedback. I know some of the Patreon thing you were saying about how Jeff did a tour of the ATC in Atlanta, which is, I'm sure, a lot busier than the one I went to, which was actually in Wellington with the Aeronautical Society. I know Nick does a lot of stuff for the Aeronautical Society, and I've been a member for many years now, so it's a shout out for them, the Wellington branch, where anyone live Wellington listeners might want to join as well, or even join the local one, more local to them. Anyway, yeah, the towers are very interesting. It's only just opened up in the end of August, I think you said. So it's a relatively new building, a replacement of the old one, which actually had its own street address, which is the only control tower apparently in the whole world that had its own street address. It was completely separate from the airport and overlooked the airport, and So they've opened a new. So they say they've opened a new aluminium-clad one, which is apparently earthquake-proof and good for tsunamis and all sorts of other stuff. But you never know. It's quite close to the sea here. The Wellington Airport is pretty much on reclaimed land, and should a tsunami come in, it would probably wipe out the airport. So, yeah, it was a very interesting tour. They don't have a radar room, so sorry, AG and RH. Everything's computerized. There's no paper strips anymore. It's all, like I say, it's all computers. So you just basically make a strip on make a strip on the computer. The aircraft gives a clearance to take off or clearance to land, of course, and everything says everything done on computer. So you can watch it on the screen as the aircraft rolls down the runway and then just picks up the squawk. It squawks its ident and everything, and you can see it's a A320 or a 737 or whatever. And the radar tracks it and gives its tracks. So it's good. It's a very good system. I think there's only like 4 controllers on it at one time. What they call it the cab. So, and I think we've flights stop at about 1 o'clock in the morning and start at 6 o'clock in the morning here. So for noise abatement, with modern airlines are so much quieter, but some people who live near Heathrow would, as our good friend Adam Spink knows about all the complainers. Anyway, well, that's about it really. That's why I put this feedback in before Christmas. Maybe I'll do another one closer to Christmas. Anyway, and that'll be Glenn out.
Thank you, Glenn. Always good to hear from you, and that was a very high quality recording. Thank you.
Indeed. Nice, interesting tower visit for you there. Very cool.
Yeah.
Always fun to be able to do that type of stuff.
So not sure what the material of the tower was. Never heard of it before.
What did you say? I'm sorry, I was a little...
Aluminium.
Oh, aluminium, yeah.
I was just
I'm
making
not
an aluminium joke.
That metal
either.
I'm not
sure what that is.
I think it's some sort of metal.
Yeah.
Nick's
I think
Nick's not here to defend that right now.
Yeah.
Very similar to aluminum, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
There we go. He joined us. He's lurking in the background.
Yep, I'm here.
Right.
I'm here, safely driving.
Okay, be careful. Hands on the wheel and all that. Okay.
Hope that's okay. That's what you want to hear after that. Just total silence.
Item 6, Ruben. Some more audio feedback for Glaucus regarding starting his pilot career. Okay.
Hands-free.
Really, you're breaking up so much, I really didn't hear what you said.
Something about hands-free, I heard.
Oh no, I was going through a really bad area. I said it's all legal. It's all hands-free, so I'm good to go. Stay with the
Excellent.
show.
All right, we're going to play some more audio feedback. This is from Ruben for G-Man.
Good day. This is FO Ruben from Australia. I'm a Flying Dutchman down under. I just wanted to pitch in about G-Man's feedback in an earlier APG episode about the possibility of starting later in his life on the pathway to becoming a airline pilot or pilot in general in Australia. And I'd just like to offer my advice on that matter. Maybe the big carriers might prefer younger people, but for sure there are many other carriers which definitely employ older people, because especially at the moment, seeing that there is a shortage everywhere, all airlines are scrambling. I'm flying for Acme Regional West, as it were, and I just we hired a bunch of new classes, few new classes started this year, and they all had various age groups in all those various FOs, groups of FOs starting. So that's definitely a possibility. Shouldn't put you off in any way. I think G-Man can always contact me in case you like some more specific advice about the Australian aviation industry, I've been flying both in Australia and Europe. It's quite different, but I mean, the industries from a hiring airline perspective, Australia being more similar to the US, I think, as opposed to Europe. But nonetheless, jobs are around, and even if you won't be able to go straight into an airline, just as Captain Jeff said, which is a possibility in Europe, straight out of flight school, but it isn't in the US nor Australia. But the jobs you would do in the interim are probably the best flying you'll do in your whole career anyway, or the most exciting. So definitely go for it, I would say. And let me know if you need more info. Thanks very much. F for Ruben out.
Thank you, First Officer Ruben. Isn't our community awesome?
I was going to say, community is coming through for us. That's
absolutely
wonderful.
I mean, several times on today's show. We're all helping each other out.
That is not unusual. So if you have a question, even if we can't answer it or help you out, it's pretty likely that someone out there listening to your question on our show will have an answer or have some guidance or some assistance.
Right. And our producer Liz says that she is going to make sure that Ruben's information is sent to G-Man. And so let's see. G-Man is a Brazilian in Australia, and Ruben is a Dutchman, a flying Dutchman in Australia. Quite a mix of cultures there, huh?
Indeed.
All right, very cool. Thanks again, Ruben. Jez sends us some feedback. The most important question in the world for the captains. Okay, never mind all that Boeing versus Squarebus nonsense. This truly is the most important question of all. Do guys use real shoe polish and brushes when on a trip, or the instant paint type? Seriously, though, what travel hacks do you have that are worth sharing other than the 4 days use out of one pair of smalls? I guess a small is underwear?
Undergarment? Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, mine are large. Still loving the show, Jez.
Your pair of smalls or your pair of larges, whichever is most appropriate to you. We don't judge here.
Well, there are certain areas where you're gonna, you gotta have certain areas where you have to have it larger than a small. Bam. So yeah, shoe polish. There was a time where I actually did carry a small little travel thing of shoe polish and stuff like that. But I tend to have the proprietors at the airport shine the shoes.
I was going to say, that's probably easier and faster and less hassle.
It's more expensive, but
true.
I'm
But
supporting the economy.
How often are you polishing your shoes?
Not that often.
Yeah.
No.
And I want to give a big shout out because I don't know if you have ever met this gentleman or had him polish his shoes, Jeff. But the gentleman, Jackson, Mississippi, he gives an unbelievable shoe polish. So good indeed, in fact, that I did not even have to have my shoes quite literally polished for about a month, but actually probably 3 months, and they even look better than when I got them out of the box brand new. Did such a great job.
Well, I don't get to Jackson very often, but I'll have to remember that next time I'm there.
Yeah, do remember.
It's a good travel hack. Do you have any other travel hacks, Dana?
Yeah, generally speaking, I just show up in my shoes polished, and don't bring a kit with me, or I don't tend to use those sponges because they do some damage to the shoes over time. So I would tend to say that I use shoe polish, and don't forget we have the shoe polish kit in the crew lounge that we have access to.
Right.
So not that we go down the lounge a whole lot, as you talked about in the last episode.
Yeah.
But still, if you have a pretty good sit, and my shoes are looking pretty haggard, then I'll go ahead and put a quick polish on them.
How about even other things not related to shoes? Do you guys do interesting things to make sure that the curtains are completely closed and block out all the light at night? I know some people are particular about that, and they've come up with all kinds of crazy ways of using the the clothes hangers in the room to pinch the curtains together. Ways to.
That's a good idea. I'd like to learn those hacks.
Me too.
Oh yeah, I'll have to. I'm sure they are abundant on. I know I've seen lists on Facebook of all kinds of different things to.
Very much like the gentleman at the Denver International Airport, I do the opposite. I make sure that my curtains are all the way open.
And
so as many people
out
as
of uniform?
possible. Yes, out of uniform.
Birthday suit, maybe.
So, no, you know what? So I would like to know how to get the curtains, so you can block out all the light. Sometimes I'll take some of the extra pillows and put them down where the light's coming through from the door to the hallway. That cuts down on a lot of light. But there are some places also that have like what do you call those, microwaves and that kind of thing, where they have these bright LEDs on the front of them, and it's like lighting up the entire room. I'm wondering, I keep thinking about it, but I keep forgetting to put it in my bag, like have a small roll of gaffer's tape or something like that to take to cover up some of these LED lights. That might be a good hack.
Well, I do have a very interesting hack.
Yeah.
That interesting hack is that I use a remote condom on my remote controls, for the TV. I think we may have talked about this in the past a long time ago.
So that you don't expose yourself to germs?
Yeah, pretty much. The one of the most unclean, beyond the telephone in the coffee making machine, one of the most unclean things in the room is the remote control. So what I'll do is the ice bag that you use to put the ice into the bucket, I take that, I put my hand into the ice bag, then I grab the remote control, wrap the ice bag around it, and tie a knot around the remote control. It's perfectly clear. It keeps your hands off the remote control and keeps your hands clean. And ever since I started doing that, actually, sometimes I come down with colds on of course you can catch them from flying pilots like Jeff that are sick flying, but people that spread germs in hotel rooms, I find they don't come down. Probably eliminated 3 or 4 colds just by doing that.
It's funny. A lot of these things that people think up these different hacks for traveling seem to have very little impact on me. I can sleep through pretty much anything, including various levels of light in a room, sound in a room. So it never even occurs to me to think about ways to close the blinds all the way or to block off flashing lights. I'm not, maybe surprising to some people as a physician, but I'm not a germaphobe. So I don't really worry about, remote controls or
I kind of had the same philosophy. It's like
objects like tray tables on the airplane. I just
I'm all about building up my immune system,
bathroom, and all the important things that you're supposed to do. But just for my own general daily life, not so much.
Yeah, I'm
and maybe I'm just lucky. I have a relatively robust immune system, and I don't tend to get sick too often. When I do, it's usually a good one, but I'll get like little colds and things usually in between.
I was flying with a guy, not this trip, but the last trip, and he had like a huge Ziploc bag full of the wipes, the Santa wipes, and he wouldn't touch anything in the cockpit until it was like all swabbed and everything else.
He's wiped down the entire cockpit.
Yeah, and it was like, wow, I've seen people, wash their hands with
Purell and that type of thing.
But it was like over everything, and But I'm of the philosophy, I'm like you, Steph. It's just like, I figure that's going to boost my immune system by exposing myself to some of these things. But
low level
whatever.
amount of germs.
Any other hacks for us, Steph?
I think one that I see come up a lot, especially for relatively new pilots or people who are on a budget, perhaps, who don't have a lot of disposable income to be eating out a lot or want to save some of that per diem money, ways to bring food on trips. And I actually have one of these because it's really nice for when I'm in the office and I don't have time to, make a healthy meal or I want to avoid eating out. You can bring leftovers or sometimes even just cook in this thing. It's called a Hot Logic Mini, and it basically is like the equivalent size of, you know, like a leftover food container, but it's insulated and it's got a little hot plate on the bottom and a electrical cord, and you plug it into the wall and it either heats or will even cook in some cases your meal over, kind of like a slow cooker type of deal. So over an hour, hour and a half. So if you're looking for ways to get hot meals that are more potentially more nutritious and much more affordable, that's one thing to look into. It's like $35 and I use it all the time at work. I think it's well worth the investment.
Cool. What's it called again?
A Hot Logic Mini.
Hot Logic Mini. Okay.
Mm-hmm. I know a lot of especially regional airline pilots use that a lot for cooking in hotel rooms and things like that. You just need a plug, an outlet. What else?
Now I use you know those ice you know the ice bags that you can buy at like a CVS or a drugstore that you use to put on your head for a headache. I'll use to keep if I'm bringing food with me and I have a cooler, I'll use those as a portable ice bag that is completely sealed, doesn't leak, and keeps everything nice and cold.
Very cool. Yeah, I remember you. I remember flying with you and you having those. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's a nice way to help keep food, and if you want to stay somewhat healthy, of course, most of the food on the road is very unhealthy. Another thing you mentioned, keeping the curtains closed. It's not a big deal to me, but I do have those big black clips that have the two little levers on them.
Yeah, binder clips or whatever they call them.
The binder clips. Yeah, if I'm having a problem keeping the blinds closed, you don't need the big one. Just a small one works too, and you can use those to keep the blinds closed. And a lot of pilots, including myself, tend to carry those because we keep things clipped together or clipped on the yoke mount. So that's another way to keep those blinds closed. The blackout curtains closed.
Excellent. Good stuff. Good hacks. All right. If you have a hack, dear listener, that you think that the APG community could benefit from, please send it in. Feedback at airlinepilotguy.com. Use the feed form website, the feedback functionality on the apps, and what else? All kinds of different ways to send us feedback. Thank you, Jez, for asking the question. Let's continue with some more audio feedback. This from Matt, who interviewed another member of our APG community, and both Matt and Evan are from Down Under. And without further ado, let's hear what they have to say.
G'day everyone, MBF here. Just here with my mate Evan Shu. Today we're going to talk about something that happened a few weeks ago, and it's something that happens numerous places around the world, and for some people who are GA pilots who are unaware of these particular groups. G'day Evan, how are you, mate?
G'day, Matt. Good to see you.
Good to see you too. What's been happening? It has been a little while.
Uh-oh. What happened here?
I thought for a second maybe your signal just cut out, but
no, it's
it
stopped playing.
Uh-oh.
And maybe it hasn't completely downloaded on this machine. Maybe that's what it was, because I've already listened to this, but it was on my.
Yeah, I've listened to it.
I have to.
It's like 16 minutes long.
Let me stop doing the sharing because it happened to coincide when I was doing doing the changing these. Doing the screen sharing, but it was on this computer, and it was on the computer that I'm doing the Hangout was where I listened to this interview, but apparently my main production computer where I run the show, that interview wasn't already downloaded, which is kind of odd because it usually downloads all this stuff almost instantly. But I can see that there's a progress bar going on here, so I do apologize for that. Since we're in kind of a virtual pause mode, Liz, how much time do we have left? About 25 minutes? think we started around. Well, we started the first time around 10, and then it was more likely around 15 after. So maybe 20 minutes to go, a little over 20 minutes.
I think like 20 minutes. She sent a message that said half hour, just a little bit ago.
Yeah,
Less
about
than
20,
20.
she says. Okay. Okay, this is still downloading, but maybe it's buffered enough where I can give it another shot. Let's see if I hit the... I'm going to give it a little bit more. And you know what? This is going to take 16 minutes and 19 seconds left of our 20 minutes.
Do you want to finish up with the other 3 that we have? I hate to bump their interview, but
Yeah,
make that
I
first.
do
The next
too.
one.
And I think Evan's with us in the chat room.
Evan
Evan,
is.
is it
Matt
okay if we
had to
bump
leave.
your interview to the next episode?
We're sorry.
Yeah, we're kind of running out of time. Yeah, I think we're going to make that command decision. Let's just do that. Why don't we finish off with the other items in the folder, and then we'll make sure that we lead off, Liz, on the next episode with Matt's interview with Evan Shu. So let's jump to item 9. And this,
excellent.
This is a good one. I wanted to make sure we got this one in as well. So from our producer, Liz, she found this somewhere, hushkit.net, which I've never heard of HushKit. What is that? Is that an aviation website?
No, it's like I think they do like lists like this, like top 10 lists or top whatever number lists of just interesting things, or just one of, like those internet sites that don't really have a lot of substance to their content, but things that you're just going to
But they have a lot of ads.
Read for enjoyment. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So the title of this is The Top 34 Pilot Mustaches. And Liz says, another shocking example of inaccuracy in regards to aviation reporting. It is starkly obvious that this list is missing one very important pilot. How can that be? I guess she's referring to me. But I don't know. Looking at some of these mustaches, I got a long way to go before I have a...
I mean, there are some real works of art.
Yes. And there are some really that I'm thinking...
yeah. And then there are some that are really not good.
No. So according to the author of this article, along with a sense of dash, a disrespect for authority, and a dog, the male pilot should have a mustache. When we asked our readers for their suggestion, I'm glad they made that distinction there. A male pilot should have a stash. When we asked our readers for their suggestions for the top 10 pilot mustaches, we were stunned by the huge response. With this in mind, we have grown the list from 10 to a great hairy 34. And the number 34, we're not going to cover everyone because we don't have enough time to do it. I do like this one, though. The first one, item number 34, or list on the list, number 34, Dick Dastardly. Curses foiled again. That's a cartoon. I don't know if this is just a U.S. cartoon or not, but Dick Dastardly with, what was the dog's name? I can't remember the dog's
I don't remember either. I wish I did, because it's great. I mean, but when
Yeah.
you see if you're not, if the name is not ringing a bell for you, if you click on the link and look at the picture, I think most readers will recognize this
It's a
cartoon.
very long, thin handlebar mustache, and it's his appearance is based on Sir Percival Ware Armitage from The Magnificent Men and Their Flying Machines, played by Terry Thomas. Dick is penalized for not being real. Item 33, Chelsea.
Muttley? Was that
Huh?
the dog's name?
Oh,
Muttley?
yeah. I think you're right.
That
Is
was
what
from
it was?
the chat room.
Yeah, I think that might be right. Muttley. Item number 33, Chesley Sullenberger. Sully Sullenberger. And they have little comments about each of these. So it's definitely worth looking at this link. Item number 32, Chief Instructor CDR Commander Mike Viper Metcalf from the homoerotic naval recruitment film Top Gun.
The comments are definitely worth reading,
Yeah,
even
you
if we
need
don't
to-
get to all of them. Yeah.
Some of them are not very kind.
That is
Most-
funny.
Most of them are not very kind.
Yeah, most of them are really not they're harsh. I love number 30, General Goichi Nagaoka. This guy's mustache is probably from tip to tip, from left to right,
I mean, a good.
at least a 1.5 to 2 feet long.
Yeah.
Or wide. Very, very nice. I'm jealous.
Impressive.
Very impressive. Let's see. CJ Heatley, quote, strawberry Top Gun. F-14 pilot, Top Gun instructor, and photographer Heatley took pictures that inspired the Top Gun film. I don't know if that's true or not. I guess so. All very well, but his thespian mustache seems too conventional to earn many points, despite its excellent condition and strawberry blonde hue. As you can see, they're having fun with this. We have some Germans, some World War II aces, World War I aces. Our favorite Bob Hoover sports a very nice. This is just a drawing, not an actual photo of him, but it's a pretty nice. It's an impressive mustache. I think. Let's see, Steph. Are there any in here that while you're scrolling through that that stand out to you?
Oh, yeah, just other notable names that people recognize and know of. Howard Hughes.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see who else. There was one. Oh, the apparently the Indians at the have made the top of the list for having the most impressive mustaches.
Apparently, it's a sign of ultimate masculinity in their culture.
India.
Yeah. Oh, I love this one. Group Captain Mandrake, Peter Sellers and Stanley Kubrick's Dr. Strangelove. They have a picture of him with his mustache, and they said they took points off, though, they say, because it's probably not a real mustache.
Yes.
Anyway.
Yeah, good stuff.
Check it out.
Well, number one, of course.
Number one. And who is that? Who would that be?
Orville Wright.
Orville Wright.
The original pilot, yes.
And, I have to say, in this portrait, very impressive mustache.
Indeed.
Yes. All right,
and,
so if you...
And if you look on the back of your license, or it's on the front side of your pilot license, that same mustache is adorned there, I believe.
Mm-hmm. I believe so.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Thank you, Liz, for that. And again, please be sure, dear listener, to check this out in the show notes. I think you'll get a kick out of it. Uh-oh. What do we have here? The Adventures of Ivor and Tarquin. Actually, this is just Ivor. Hi, my name is Ivor. Oh, wait a minute. I think Ivor sent this to the wrong show. I think he meant to send this to a different podcast. I'm going to read it anyway, though. Let's just see what he's up to. Hi, my name is Ivor. This is my first feedback to the Alex's VFR/IFR podcast. Well, Alex, you've certainly hit on a subject that's caught the imagination of the geeky pilot community. You can always measure a subject's popularity by using the Anderson scale. If you activate the aging and frankly worrying brain cells of that little scamp, Captain Nick Anderson, you've got the aviation world at your feet. Now, I'm not prepared to get close to any pilot's feet, but a certain part of Alex's feedback intrigued me. It wasn't being downwind of a CTAF, whatever on God's earth that is, over here in the UK. That would be an uncomfortable situation of being halfway up a Welsh mountain just behind Captain Al on a particularly windy day. But back to my interest in Alex's feedback. The airport was called Muscle Shoals. I don't believe it, as I'm sure Michael will back me up. Muscle Shoals is a world-renowned rhythm section and a recording studio of worldwide fame. That's one of the studios, so don't try and fool us music geeks. We won't allow you to pretend that Muscle Shoals has an airport worthy of such a feedback frenzy, unless it's some one-eyed, one-horse town, and the airport is something that normal people would call a flying club. And one of your pilot friends tried to land an airliner in amongst the innocent Cessna 150/172 and Beechcraft community. Shame on you. Keep up the good work, Alex. Much better than this APG nonsense. Yours cordially, Ivor McDonald, your faithful servant. So, Ivor, did you understand that you sent this to our show and not Alex's VFR/IFR podcast? Well, we know how he feels about us.
Yeah, I think that was worth reading.
Yeah. Me too. And Muscle Shoals is a place, and it's also they've got the Swampers, right?
The what?
Sweet
Who?
Home Alabama.
Oh,
Lord, I'm coming home to you. Let's see. In Muscle Shoals, they have the Swampers. I think is the are the lyrics.
the lyric from the song.
Yeah.
All I can
let's
think of
see.
is the first line of in Muscle Shoals. They've got the something.
Yeah. Somewhere they have the governor. But in Muscle Shoals, they have the Swampers. Anyway, check out Sweet Home Alabama, and you'll hear the town of Muscle Shoals mentioned, which is on. It's nicely situated on the Tennessee River, but don't be confused. It's not in Tennessee. It's in Alabama.
Excellent. Hey, before we go on, can I make a correction?
Yes.
You had asked about whatever hushkit.net was. Apparently, it is just an aviation-related site.
That makes sense because they use hush
tagline
kits
is-
on noisy jet engines,
Yes,
right?
yes, that does make sense. I think I was thinking of something else similar. Who knows? But
Yeah.
apparently, their tagline is the Alternative Aviation Magazine. So there you go.
Very good. I'll have to check it out.
My bad.
Hey, no problem. Hey, we mentioned them several times, so I'm sure they'll appreciate that.
Yes.
And finally, we have this feedback from young Gabriel. Hi, Captain Jeff and the rest of the team. It's Gabriel here, referred to in chat as Solar Car. And I think I did see that name in the chat. Or is he still there?
Uh-huh.
Okay. Excellent.
Or
I've been
at least
listening
was
to
recently.
I've been listening to APG for quite a while now, and actually have written to you a few times already. And I'm thinking, I don't remember getting anything from Gabriel. Turns out I was not supposed to send it directly from the website. Okay, so apparently, however he was trying to send it to us, we never got it. Well, I'm writing to you now. I have a few questions. Number one, I've just started ground school to get my RPP. Is that recreational pilot permit?
Yes, I believe he is in Canada. So
Okay.
perhaps
Yeah, I'm not
that's
sure what an RPP is.
maybe like a sport pilot.
Maybe,
license,
yeah.
Similar.
Okay. I'm not going to say my exact age for security reasons, but let's just say that I'm under the age to acquire the actual permit. Anyway, this is a start. Do you have any suggestions? For example, what should I be certain to take notes on? What can I do to improve my learning experience, etc.? Any tips?
Yeah, so if you've got some time before you can actually get in, well, you should be able to get flight experience, at least in the United States. You'd be able to fly with an instructor. Just there's age requirements on age limitations on actually getting your certificate or being able to take your check ride. However, and to solo and things like that. But I'd say, it's great that you have this interest already, and soak in as much as you can from ground school. And I'd say, this is all practice, and actually it's a hands-on skill. So as much time you can spend getting hours and getting instruction. Make sure you have an instructor that you get along with and who you feel like you're able to work well with. I think those are the most important things, and the rest is just repetition and practice.
And what should I be certain to take notes on? I'd say everything. No, I don't know.
No, I mean, you want to have the requisite knowledge to. There's two kinds of knowledge, I think, anytime you're learning something. There's knowledge to pass a test, which is one thing, is good and should encompass the stuff that you need to know to safely operate an aircraft, to fly safely, theory, systems, all that type of stuff. But make sure that you retain the stuff that, like I said, is just that important for safe operation of the aircraft you're flying. Solid theory, fundamentals of flight. Most of that you're going to get in the aircraft. The rest of it is stuff that's important for operating environments that you're in, specific to airports, regulations about where you can fly, and might be specific to the country that you're in. So.
Oh, I have some advice.
Mm-hmm.
When you're actually flying at the controls, don't take notes.
Don't take notes then. That's a bad time to take notes.
Yeah, because the airplane will probably go out of control. B, what does Acme Airline stand for? I asked Mr. Google. I have not met Mr. Google yet. And he didn't seem to know. All that came up was Alaska Air. Is that Acme? No, Gabriel, it's not It's not Alaska. It's not American. And
Southwest.
It's a virtual airline that is not real. But I do fly for a real airline. So go ask Mr. Google MD-88 and then put in the word Atlanta and see what the results are. Now, I've not done that myself. Let's see what happens when I do that.
That's a good question. Make sure that doesn't go to something questionable.
Yeah. Okay. Let's see. MD-88. And
yeah, it's going to come up with.
And
Mr. Google has the right answer.
Mr. Google, yes, has the answer. The top result. That is the airline I fly for. I don't say it because I don't want to be misunderstood or misconstrued or whatever. I don't want somebody to take me as an official spokesperson for the real airline for which I fly. And by the way, I love the airline for which I fly. I would never say anything bad about it, but just to be on the safe side, I don't mention its real name. Yes, Dana.
Well, I was just going to say, I absolutely agree with you, Jeff. I absolutely love the company that we work for as well, and I would never want to do anything to jeopardize that. And it goes all the way back to my first episode. I was even on the show where I wasn't even willing to give my real name.
Yeah, I noticed that.
Of course, that's
yeah,
going
Tony.
Forward quite a few. Yeah, Tony, exactly. So it's going forward quite a few years. Unfortunately, I missed the first part of his question, and I heard what Dr. Steph was saying about what would be good to keep his mind sharp and what he needs to learn in becoming a pilot. Am I getting the right gist as to what the question was?
Yeah, he just started ground school to get his recreational pilot's permit in Canada.
Well, the biggest thing is full immersion. I mean, if one of the things that I ran into personally when I was learning to fly is that I kept on starting and stopping, and there's a very big disadvantage to that. It costs you a lot more money. You're not as competent initially because you're having to relearn things over and over, and if you look into just what you do in high school and college, they teach you all these different courses that they want you to be able to use in life. For example, how often after, I don't know if you, Dr. Steph, but me as an airline pilot, I don't use algebra and trigonometry. But those required courses to become an airline, go through the airline program at my school at least. But in real world practicality, that's book knowledge that you need to develop and get through school. But do I use it in practicality every day? No. So that really applies to the same thing with flying. Even when Jeff and I learned how to fly the airplane we're on, there's a lot more that we have, that we had to know about the airplane, that we have to be familiar with. We have to know where to look the information up. And that's kind of where I'm going with this, is just you have to know where your resources are. You have to get through the tests, and once you get through those tests, pretty much like Dr. Steph was saying, you apply the information that you have, and then you can use those resources. Once you have the knowledge, pass those tests, you become a more competent person because you know where the resources are. You don't have to know everything. You just need to have the information to get through where you are presently, and that is if you get your equivalent of a sports pilot license here in the United States, which I think is a correct assessment. You get through that process. You know the information as a sport pilot to pass that test. Then you start, what I would say, you start really learning how to fly and gain that experience. And actually goes right back to what we were talking about earlier when on the flight directors. I mean, that's a level of comfort that you eventually build up.
We're losing you, Dana. Thank you, though. Good input. We're kind of losing Dana's signal, so appreciate your input, sir. And I have not been looking at the chat room. Is he saying anything in return for all of this wonderful
Nope.
advice we're giving him?
I think he's no longer with us in the
Oh,
chat
that's
room.
okay. Well, he'll have to listen then after the fact.
Place that it's turning soak up there.
Pardon me? Yeah.
I think he's still giving advice.
Yeah.
No, I'm not.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
I couldn't tell if you were-
I'm sorry. I went through a tunnel and must have lost my signal. So but
Yeah,
you get
yeah.
the gist of it. So
Yeah.
you
Yep,
know,
got it.
Enough said.
All right.
Enough said.
Thanks, Dana. Let's see. So to just kind of tie this thing up and with a bow, the last paragraph on his feedback or in his feedback. Also, I do live in Canada, so if you have any questions concerning the second largest country in the world, I'm all ears. Also, if you make some comment about our country, do expect to hear from me. Okay. And I thought, wait a minute, the second largest country in the world?
Uh-huh.
I'm thinking, that can't be right. And
Not
so,
second largest population, second largest
as far as
land
area,
mass.
yeah, and I actually learned something here, and I was kind of surprised to see that Russia
Russia is number one.
is number one in area, Canada number 2, the United States number 3. I'm thinking, wait a minute, where's China? 4.
4.
Well, I guess the United States because of Alaska.
Yeah. And I think even just actually, I'm not sure if the lower 48 would be larger or not than
Yeah,
mainland China.
I'm
I'm looking at a
ignorant.
map right now, and they're pretty similar in latitude, and so the the amount of distortion shouldn't be that much difference between the two, and it's close. I think definitely Alaska tips it over the edge there.
Yeah, but and that's as a measure of actual square footage or square mileage or whatever you want to call it. And when you talk about population, then of course we're talking about a different order. But yeah, so thanks for your feedback, Solar Car. Age unknown, and good luck with your ground school and your flying experience. And please
Let us know
continue
how it
to
goes.
listen. Yeah.
We like the updates.
Yes, we do. We're all about that. And we have several people who have started off with hardly any experience whatsoever and now are actually flying for airlines. So this is a good place to hang out. So thanks for being there, Gabriel, and look forward to hearing from you and your progress in the future. And that brings us to the end of episode 352. Let's see, if you want to, if you're new to the show and you want to learn more about what the heck this APG thing is, Airline Pilot Guy show, our Airline Pilot Guy community, APG community is awesome. That's the best part of doing all of this. And if you want to learn more about it, head over to airlinepilotguy.com where you learn about the community, the crew, our backgrounds. Oh, by the way, speaking of that, if you don't already listen to Pilot Pip's and Captain Al's wonderful plane safety podcast, please do. The last couple of episodes have been just amazing. It is their version of How I Got Here, an installment that we sometimes have on this show by Captain Steve Horn, who has been very, very busy learning new airplanes with a new airline. And so he hasn't been able to do any of those awesome productions lately. But if you want to hear how Pilot Pip and Captain Al got to where they are, it's very entertaining and very informative. And I think that everybody would get a kick out of listening to, well, his show is awesome to begin with, but the latest couple of episodes were great.
Yeah, I need to listen to part 2. I've listened to part 1. Very good.
And they're thinking that it's only going to be a 2-parter, but then they get to a certain point and realize,
did they go into part 3?
They ran out
Oh, shoot.
of time on this one as well. So, but anyway, good job, guys. Really, really enjoying that, and it got me to thinking maybe we need to do that sometime on the APG.
Yeah.
To kind of learn more about how we all got to where we are. And Dana's story is very interesting and different from anybody else's. Captain Nick and mine, more similar than not. We're both from military backgrounds. And then Dr. Steph, it's always interesting to hear how she got involved in flying and more about her life. She's an amazing person as well. So maybe we'll do that sometime as a special episode or whatever. We'll
Sure.
take that on perhaps. But
I'd definitely be game for that as well.
okay, excellent. So again, big plug for the Plane Safety podcast. It's planesafety.com. And let's see. So I talked
podcast, I think, .com.
What did I say?
Planesafety.com.
Yeah.
I think it's help us out, Pip. Is it planesafetypodcast.com or planesafety.com?
Oh, I'm sorry. Plane Safety Podcast. You're right.
I think so.
I'm thinking you're saying that. I'm thinking, well, isn't
That's
that
what
I
I
just
said.
Apparently not.
You're not hearing the words that are coming out of my mouth.
I hear the difference of what I was saying and what you were saying. Okay. Anyway, apps for the phones, iOS and Android are out there. Information about that on the website. Social media, Steph.
Social media. We are on Twitter. Find us there using the handle @APG Crew. And you can also head over to Facebook, facebook.com/Airline Pilot Guy. Both great places to interact with the community, interact with us, and find out additional information about the goings-ons in terms of when shows are recording and when we might be at a location near you for meetups.
Absolutely. And we're also on Slack.
APG listeners, please join us on our Slack team. Slack is a communication, coordination, and sharing platform that works on your mobile, laptop, or browser. On Slack, we share ideas and news. We suggest episode and Plain Tales topics. We plan events and meetups. To get into the Slack team, please email me at slack@airlinepilotguy.com. That's SLACK, Sierra Lima Alpha Charlie Kilo @airlinepilotguy.com. Or send me a tweet with your preferred email address to @Hillel, and I'll send you an invitation. That's Hillel, spelled HI11E1, Hotel India 11 Echo 1. And see you in Slack.
Thanks, Hillel. And finally, until next time, wishing you clear skies, unlimited visibility, and tailwinds. Take care, and God bless.
Cheers, y'all.
Bye-bye, everyone. Talk to you next time.
It's a wrap.
Woohoo!
Now I don't have to try to mute back and forth all the time here.
I know, that's really difficult to do.
It is.
Sometimes.
Julie's like, let me hold your phone for you. I'm like, no, that doesn't do me much good because I need to be able to mute back and forth.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And she can't tell when. Yeah.
Do you have one of the, so I have a little like magnet in my case for my phone so I can plop it up on the dash.
Yeah, mine's just sitting right on my right leg.
Oh.
So I just reach down and I just touch the screen real quick and just get to the unmute. But now I don't have to worry about that anymore. But yeah, I'm glad I could actually be here for a whole episode. That's so exciting.
Yeah, awesome. Well, have a good trip down to Florida. Where are you going exactly in Florida?
Actually going to the Villages, the VD capital of the world.
All those old whippersnappers doing all that stuff.
Yeah, they're all doing that stuff because, they don't need, nobody needs to worry about getting pregnant.
Maybe they should.
Actually, my neighbor, Kelvin and Judy, I know you've heard me talk about the Gar Bar before, my buddy from England. They have a investment property in the Villages, and Julie has never been down there to see it. Her mother and dad have seen it. I've seen it. So she took tomorrow off, and we're going to go down there for a very short weekend, but still a nice weekend to get away. And it seems like we've been going and doing a lot of things lately. It's just not like us, but
scoping out that retirement home, huh?
Yeah, I'm ready to buy right now. No, I'm kidding. We're actually, I didn't tell anybody this, but we're driving down in my brand new vehicle.
Oh.
Brand new vehicle?
So, brand new.
What you got?
It has 1,096 miles on it right now.
Ooh.
What kind of vehicle is this?
Durango. We decided because how nasty of an accident it was and the amount of damage it did that, I could have kept the vehicle, obviously, but I never loved the color. I really never loved the interior color. The exterior color, I don't like dark color car, real dark color cars anyways. And with all the damage that had got done and most of the parts they put into it were aftermarket parts. I just didn't want to keep the vehicle anymore. So got a really good deal on a brand new Durango 2018. that's why I went to Charleston 2 weeks ago, because they were able to get me the car from Charleston.
There you go.
Because there was only 3 of them left in the entire, pretty much the eastern part of the country. There were only 9 in the entire country left over from 2018. I hadn't had the exact setup I wanted, and I got a really good deal. And the financing, I don't like the fact that I'm paying 2.9% versus 0%, but I'm going to pay it down quicker, and it really didn't raise my my car payment all that much, and then the motorcycle's paid off now too. So really, we're down over $500 a month in any payment. We bought it. We love it. It's a burgundy. It's like a cranberry color and it's all blacked out, like black wheels, black trim, black mirrors. It really looks nice. I'll send you guys a photo.
Yeah.
All right. Well, enjoy it and enjoy the weekend, and we'll see you next week.
All right. When are you guys thinking next week? Because I am flying Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday.
I'm Tuesday through Friday, and I'm not sure of Nick's schedule.
Yeah, I don't know what Nick's doing. My schedule is, I don't know. What am I doing next week?
And Steph's schedule is, I don't know.
Well, mine might depend on, so now they're calling for potential winter weather this weekend. So anywhere between rain and a foot of snow is in the forecast. Whatever that means, it's one of those things where, I'll believe it when I see it happening.
That means you got to go to the store right now to get the milk and the bread.
Milk and bread. Yeah. Time for milk sandwiches or French toast.
You better run, Steph. Although you have that nice Jeep that has, I have all-wheel drive now too, so I can say I don't have to worry about it as much either. But
yeah,
the
hands down, the Jeep is the best car for snow I've ever owned. Nothing does well in ice though, so if that ends up being an issue, that's the only thing I won't.
Yeah, it doesn't matter how many wheel drive you have in ice.
Nice tires, everything slides on ice, which is usually what we get more than anything else. But it's one of those things where everyone's already, it's Thursday and this is like a Sunday, Monday forecasted event, so everyone's panicking already.
Oh boy.
Love the South.
Yeah. You probably have no bread, no milk, no water.
I'm sure if I go to the store right now, the shelves will already be emptied.
You can probably still find beer though.
Well, fortunately, no one stocks up on that for inclement weather. I have no idea why.
Yeah, I mean, alcohol is what you got to stock up on.
I think Liz earlier said
it's going to get you through it.
Beer and toilet paper. Like, what more do you need?
Exactly. All right. Well, with that, thank you everybody for hanging out with us in the chat room. Several of us signed off. They're over there the other side of the pond. Thanks for hanging out with us today. I hope you enjoyed the earlier show. And we'll be here again sometime next week, hopefully. And we hope that you have a great weekend and a great week. And we're going to go ahead and stop the broadcast, if you don't mind.
Bye.
Bye.
Take care.
Bye. I didn't realize we're still broadcasting. Damn it. I don't want